Just a few film nerds breaking out of a rut, drooling over cinema that's hard and uncut. Stick us in your ear, thrill to this month's picks, and come and listen in, we're Measuring Flicks.
Hello everyone, welcome to Measuring Flicks. My name is Carl Hartley.
I'm Max Peterson. And today, this is week 3 of Carl's Flick Picks.
It's my birthday month.
It sure is. When is your birthday, by the way?
July 18th.
Oh, wait. We're not even close to July.
Not even close. We're at the end of May.
We got to be getting pretty close to your birthday, aren't we, Carl?
No, not. We're like 54 days ahead. So.
Yeah, we're recording way in advance. And you know what? I feel good about it.
I'm feeling pretty decent.
Today, we are talking about 1988's The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, directed by Terry Gilliam and starring like a billion people whose names I didn't know, but whose faces are dear to my heart.
There's so many faces. It's like, oh my gosh, it's that guy. What's he from a thing?
Yeah, there was, and again, we were doing that thing where I'm like, is that Jeffrey Rush? You're like, it looks like Jeffrey Rush, but it's not Jeffrey Rush.
He's Jeffrey Rush-ish.
And I'm like, right, okay. Oh, look, is that Ben Kingsley? And you're like, no, it's not Ben Kingsley, but it looks he's a titch Kingsley-ish. And I'm like, okay. Oh, look, not Shelley Duvall is back.
Not Shelley Duvall again.
And she looks so much, almost not exactly quite like Shelley Duvall.
So fucking close.
But she's nearly Shelley Duvall.
Yep.
We gotta watch a Shelley Duvall movie eventually. Popeye.
Oh, okay. Well, it'll be Robin Williams again, who plays the King of the Moon in this movie.
Yeah, I was delighted to see him pop up, and I was
early. Well, 88, so it was like relatively earlier Robin Williams.
Right. This feels to me like his. Do you ever listen to his stand-up around Mork and Mindy?
No, I haven't.
So it was really cool when he does. I have I'll get you a CD of it, but there's around like the time Mork and Mindy was going on, he was doing stand-up sets. And his whole thing was, when I do my stand-up, I'm going to do everything but Nanu Nanu. I'm not fucking around. Like, Mork and Mindy is its own thing, and that's great. But my stand-up is Robin Williams stand-up. Right. This is my place to do other stuff. And on the recording of... it's called Reality, What a Concept is the name of the comedy album. And when he gets on stage, there's like several times during the show you can hear somebody saying like, Nanu Nanu, or like, come on, Mork and Mindy. And at one point he even addresses it. He's like, no, that's what I do over on my television show. Right. But when I'm up here on stage, I'm doing my other thing, man. I do it all the time, and he addresses it and keeps the flow going. But this feels of that era to me, that like I'm crazy, I'm Robin Williams, I'm up in the universe. This is like before he's like, all suicides go to hell or whatever,
No, this is the goofy, like, do many voices over the top Robin Williams.
Well, and he plays the fruit bat in Fern Gully. He voices the bat.
Very cool.
And when he gets like shocked, or I think he hits a tree or something, and he goes, I'm blind. He says that exact line here, almost the same way. That's the only reason I remembered he was the fruit bat. Is I'm like, he says that in Fern Gully.
I'm blind.
When he gets hit with the fruit, I'm blind. It's amazing. It's so funny.
So what the heck, this movie? It's the third in the trilogy of the imagination.
Yes.
Which we talked about because we did Brazil.
Which is the middle film.
The middle of. And Time Bandits is the first one. This is the last one.
The last one. Right. Okay, yeah.
Which is dealing with, like, Time Bandits is... Well, there's a child in this one, too. But Polly. Time Bandits is primarily...
No, Sally. Played by Sarah Polley.
So, yes. So a lot of this is sort of... She is our... she is the character that we sort of go on the adventure with.
Like our POV character.
Like our POV character in a way. But like if you're looking out of the corner of your eye, in a way. Like that's how it doesn't... I don't feel like we are along her... Well, she clearly is like our touchstone, our...
Right. She's our
eye in, but it's such a crazy... movie that is almost that doesn't even work as far as an explanation of
I think Baron Munchausen himself is the protagonist.
Oh yes,
but I like her as the POV character. Mm-hmm. She's the audience proxy,
right?
Because we don't hold on to his world at all. We have no touchstone.
He barely holds on to his world,
right? But I think that's part of the charm. Mm-hmm. Can I read a couple names that no one's gonna know?
Yeah.
Baron Munchausen's played by John Neville. Eric Idle plays Bertold. Yes. There's Oliver Reed, Robin Williams. Sting makes a hilarious brief appearance, and Uma Thurman.
Yes.
And I wrote down, come for the fantasy and social commentary, stay for Uma Thurman.
Yeah, no shit.
Oh my God. I feel in a weird way. I've never seen Time Bandits. Mm-hmm. But I feel, based on what you just said, how there's a child in this one, and it's a child that we follow, even though we're really, it really is truly the story of Baron Munchausen, and of that, like you said in the last episode, being unhappy where you are in old age and reclaiming your life, basically.
Because he's that's literally what he's doing, is going and finding his old friends, his servants, as he calls them. Right. And his servants have all also aged and not happy with where they are, except for the guy with
the big guy.
No, well, the big guy's happy.
Yeah, he's like redefined himself.
Yeah, he's redefining. He's like, I want to be
delicate.
But yeah, it's about but even in that discovery of finding yourself, it's like there's still, the reality is that everything has moved on.
Right.
Even those servants and friends that used to have all these abilities, which they end up at the end of the film like sort of having I can still run fast, I can still shoot straight, I can still ride my horse, I can still do all of the things I used to do. I might not be as quick, and I might not be as ready to do it, but I still have the ability to do so.
Forced myself not to cry several times during this movie. And I wrote down something about old men making one last glorious go of it always gets me. I'm particularly thinking of like Hardigan and Sin City.
Yeah.
Bert and I were talking about this the other day because she pointed out that I often when I write, I often write like old characters who are like not physically able to do all of the, I think probably reacting against like the Marvel stuff. Not like the comic book thing where like everyone is perpetually like 31 years old.
Right.
And they're all in peak physical health.
Exactly.
You know? I've never liked that. So, but there's something about like old men who are like almost done, like they're almost at the end of their story.
They got like the one last fight.
They
left
do that
in them
one.
kind
I
of
mean,
thing.
that's why I love Unforgiven. We talked about Unforgiven earlier this year, and that just fucking got me. Yeah. Speaking of, it just occurred to me as you were talking, but like being unhappy and like reclaiming your life or reclaiming your story. It occurs to me that Baron Munchausen literally reclaims his story when we are first introduced to him. Mm-hmm. He's watching a falsified, but a fictionalized version of his life.
Yeah.
There's like a ooh, and we sail across the windy,
over dramatized and sort of poking fun in a way. Yeah.
I love that he like kicks the door, and because what we watch is Terry Gilliam shows us is him, like going on one last adventure and reclaiming that thing that he's lost. But it starts with him just taking control of his story again. He kicks down the door and he's basically like, this play is horse shit.
Yeah.
And he gets up on stage and then he's like, all right, everyone, settle down. And then he starts telling his own story. I love the agency that he reclaims right there.
Yes.
Like,
and it's right at the top of the show. I mean, he reclaims. And the rest of it is just us following along and having it's just a fun adventure.
It really is.
I love stories like this where you could break it down. It's like 6 individual vignettes, 6 individual little stories. I just love that.
I really enjoyed the device, I guess, of giving us, you have to go and collect his friends.
Right.
So you have different fun adventures to collect each friend.
They're each a Horcrux.
Yeah, exactly. Until Gilliam looks at the watch and he's like, all right, okay, this last one he's going to get the last 2 he needs.
Right, he's got the last 2.
We've been
here for 2 hours. We got
that Vulcan section.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I like, and I swear to God, we'll get into like the fantasy element of this, because my heart was just, it grew 9 sizes this day.
Awesome.
I was floating off the couch and I was like, oh!
I always get worried because like I had such a grand time finding Jim Jarmusch in last month.
Terry Gilliam is my Jim Jarmusch.
Just like terrified that like, God, I really fucking hope Max likes these. Like,
no,
oh shit.
God.
Yeah, okay,
oh my
good.
God, I'm telling you, man, the way that I feel like the way that that Jim Jarmusch hit you, where you're like, I can't believe I've gone this long without seeing his films. I've seen Terry Gilliam's 2 like mainstream movies, but
like Fear and Loathing and
12 Monkeys,
12
but
Monkeys,
discovering this, the Fantasist. Oh my God. I am going to go on a Terry Gilliam like deep dive rabbit hole once this month is done. But what I wanted to say, before we got into the fantastical elements,
yes,
and the filmmaking, because I noticed, not in a bad way, but I after being so like, Brazil just took me by such surprise, where I'm like,
it's jarring. Yeah,
you're adrift in Brazil, so
Yeah.
you're not able necessarily to watch the filmmaking of it. I'm like, having had that Brazil experience where I'm just like, what in the fuck am I watching?
Yeah.
Now that I had seen that with In Baron Munchausen,
you're getting acclimated a little bit to his style. Or
right,
to like,
right. Where I can now pay attention to some camera work and pay attention to simple tricks that he's doing to create effects. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that's how he's doing it. It's awesome. It's like going and seeing a magician for the 200th time and finally catching a glimpse of like a card flying up the sleeve.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like you've been so dazzled that you're like, what the fuck? And then you're like, I gotta go see the show again.
Well, the crazy thing about that is, like, if the magician is good enough, right, and it's enjoyable enough, even seeing that card, seeing that it doesn't matter, it almost makes the magician even that more impressive.
Right.
Knowing that that's what he's doing, that's how he's doing it.
And
holy fuck,
you know, the craziest,
how is that even possible?
The craziest thing about Gilliam as magician for me is you're like, okay, so he's probably got an elaborate contraption which reaches out and sucks the cards into a vortex onto his back and then hides it like under a crevasse in his pants. But when you watch and you start to actually figure out what he's doing cinematically, what the camera moves are, what the editing moves are, it's literally as simple as him holding up a flower and being like, and watch, and then he takes the flower with his other hand and holds it behind his back and he goes, and it's gone, and you're like, oh, that is literally all he's doing.
Literally how he's.
He just does it so fucking smoothly that you never stop looking at the wrong hand.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so amazing. But what I wanted to say was, I love that in this movie, about the, you know, like the reclaiming of agency and the like, there's a great line when they're playing, when they get to the boat in the fish and they're playing cards, and the one guy says, like, we've been dead for a long time. You know, like, oh, those were the good old days when we were having adventures and we were alive. And then they all like become convinced that they're dead. And we can talk about that scene like in depth later. But I think that the living death, the way that the elderly are treated dismissively in the real world. Like when Baron Munchausen shows up, he's whipping a sword around. Yeah. He pulls a sword out and everyone's just like, oh, look at this mad old crazy. Man, yes. Oh, you're such an old. Oh, you need to. Who are you, sir? And even when we see a guy not insult. We see a guy do basically nothing and get executed by the public official. I think
he's just the elected official like in charge of the town.
The elected official, paperwork guy.
He is paperwork. I know,
movies,
dude. Seriously.
Here we go, another paperwork movie. But when he calls him like a pompous ass, the guy's just like, oh, that's so adorable. This old man is talking to me. Hey there, old fellow.
Completely dismissing any sort of legitimacy at all.
Yeah, like he's dismissed.
Worthless.
It's the way that old people are treated by the like general populace as a joke. You know, like, we find out later that the story is, we're being told a story. So, but even when the crowd is like booing, cheering, jeering at him, even though like the play they were watching was bullshit, was garbage. Right. When he comes out and he's like, "Hello, I'm the real Baron Munchausen," they're like, "No, you're wrong. You're stupid. The war's not about that. You're old." Like, there's a real dismissive way that old people are treated, and I like the way that by the end they've
when we come back to it, they're all enamored with him, and even the cast of the original show that he interrupts are
on his side,
completely engaged. And
I'm wondering. I was halfway through the point, and I think it fell apart for me because I think Gilliam's saying something different. I was gonna say like they've come to respect and like revere the knowledge and wisdom of the elderly, but I don't think that's it at all. I think what it's actually is in a world run down by like fact and science and logic and reason and bureaucracy and paperwork, he has managed to re-imbue them with imagination and childishness and hopefulness.
I think that's what it is, because he even says in the beginning when he thinks he's dying and death is coming after him, and he asks Sally, is like, am I dead? And she's like, no. And he's like, well, shit, I was hoping I would be.
Damn it.
He's like, because he's sick of he doesn't, there's no room for him anymore in the world as it exists now with logic and science and
he's like
laws
a folk
and
hero.
paperwork. Yeah. It's like no one will believe any of the three-eyed giants and all that kind of crazy shit. There's no
three-legged cyclops.
Three-legged cyclops. That's what it was.
God.
But then, at the end, it's like, I think you're right. It is like, that's why it's a trilogy of the imagination, right? In the end, the Baron Munchausen is giving everyone their imagination back, at least in some small way, or the spark of it,
right?
At the very least. Where the beginning of this movie is like no one has any. They're watching a horrible movie, a horrible play about. And so they're trying for some escapism. I mean, the city is crumbling around them with cannon fire, and they're watching a play. So
right, but it's
different. It's not the same.
I think it doesn't work. I think it's because we, even as viewers, because they're going to see this play, this like a bit of escapist stuff, but it doesn't work. It's not working.
Right.
And I think it's not working because we find out that the elected official is like the patron. He's keeping the theater open.
Right.
And he's getting reports every act. Like, well, how did the first act go? Well, the first act had a few technical hang-ups. I'm sure you're doing the best you can with a bad situation. It's not really escapism. No. It's corporatized. It's been co-opted by the man, if you want to get all hippy-dippy about it.
Sure.
But that's why it's not working. It's like... it is no more escapist fiction than Reefer Madness was.
Fair enough, yeah.
It's like, oh, here we are. Here's some filly follies for you to watch and ignore the cannon fire.
Right, right.
Like, there's no danger to it. There's no truth in it. And that's why, even though Baron Munchausen comes out and tells basically the same stories, that's why when we watch his accounts, it's so vivid because there's danger.
Yeah.
There's several times where you almost see a child die.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And that's fucking scary, dude. Like even
the child gets tossed into a whirlpool by
when Vulcan throws her in there, I was like, is he trying to stop her from going? And then I'm like, no, Vulcan just whips a kid into a fucking whirlpool. And in the beginning, Baron Munchausen picks up a sack and dumps the sack over the side, and the little girl falls out.
Yeah.
And he looks over the side, and it's like half a mile down. I'm like, oh my God, I thought she was going to be our POV character. And Baron Munchausen just straight killed a kid. Wow. And then no, she's on the anchor, and you're like, whoo. But that's that thing. Where when we're watching the play, it's like, and we were sailing, God damn it, where's the stagehands?
Right.
It's Kevin Smith always says there's no truth in this art as a joke, like when something's just pure artifice. There has to be a little sliver. There has to be like some worrying grit to form the pearl around. And if you just have this like fluffy stage shit just with no heart behind it. Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is the guy who's playing Baron Munchausen, he always says he's always talking about his public. So he doesn't care about the story. He's caring about himself. Yeah, he says when he figures out that he might die because they're being attacked, like he goes, my public will kill me for dying at a time like this, and this golden cusp between Romeo and Lear.
Yeah.
And it's like, no wonder people don't give a fuck about you, man.
Because he just cares about himself and how he's perceived.
You're not invested in this, but who's more invested in Baron Munchausen's story than Baron Munchausen?
Well, right, exactly.
And so much of this movie, like I think it's a very important point that when he's dying, he doesn't want to die because I'm old and tired.
He's not like giving up.
He wants to die because of the way the world has changed.
He's tired of the world. He's not tired of living. He's tired of the world. It's a difference.
And again, same thing with Brazil. This is crazy relevant to today. insanely so.
Yeah, there were a couple of moments where...
Well, for me particularly, it's just that idea. The idea of this is an age of logic and reason. I love that, by the way. The Age of Reason, Wednesday. Cannon fire and death. And you're like, oh, wow, that's totally... Because when you think of like the Age of Reason, you think of like golden spires and everyone's sitting around pontificating.
Yes.
But that's not at all how it fucking works. It becomes a bureaucratic, churning nightmare of paperwork. And there are several times where like the idiocy of war is shown expressly. When Vulcan, first thing I think is when Vulcan is like his people, all of his workers are revolting,
yes.
and he's throwing burning rocks at him, and they're hurling like shovels and spears, and he's like 2.5% is the best I can do, and they're like 4.25% or whatever, and he's like, that's preposterous, and you're like, oh, we're watching physical violence and we're arguing about percentages of what something. It's arguing about percentages. And when we see soldiers not fighting back because it's Wednesday and we don't fight on Wednesdays because we'd have to file the correct form W-1086, and the guy's like, when he's like, all right, well, you'll surrender on Wednesday at the end of the movie is like, you'll surrender next Friday at 7 p.m. and he's like, well, yes, all the details are correct, but you're going to surrender. Well, no, we surrendered last time. And it's like, what in the fuck are we even talking about? And when Baron Munchausen comes out and he says, I'm the cause of this war, and everyone's like, no, it's a border dispute about trade disagreements and tax levies, and that was what I glommed onto. I wrote down, where is my note? The human, if far-fetched, origins of war, which is, at the end of the day, it's war and fighting and conflict is, when you think about it, you're like, oh, I fucking hate that guy.
Right.
And then you punch him. It's never like, that guy, I feel like the way that he does his taxes are slightly different than mine, and I believe that he parked. And they talk about it later with the atomic bomb, but like the way that the elected official is treating war and the way that he's selling the war to society, it's all a numbers game. He's like, well, they've infringed on our borders, so we have to slaughter them wholesale, and many of you will probably die as well. But that's not it. That's not war. Like
that's balancing a ledger sheet.
Right. The obfuscation and legalese the government fucks our heads up with, which is like, well, it's very complicated. It's an international trade thing. I'm like, I don't, why are you selling it that way to us? Because it's
just tell us that you got all your treasure stolen by the strongest man in the world, and that's why.
Exactly.
The Sultan's pissed. Like
it's the simplicity of the human element of a conflict.
Yes.
Like if it's truly just like trade agreements and stuff, why don't we just all pump the brakes on like firing bullets through soft human bodies and ending lives? Why don't we just get a bunch of lawyers together and hash this shit out?
Something.
Yeah. Well, if there's no human element, why are we killing so many people? If this is just a paperwork
even if it
problem,
was even if it was for something as any human reason, like World War II made sense.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to stop mass genocide.
Right.
And
well, I think technically that's America's last war.
Yeah.
Capital W. Everything else is conflict. Because Congress hasn't declared war since then, I don't believe.
Nope.
So we've been in a conflict for like 2 decades now, which is kind of fucked up. Think about that.
Yeah.
Our country's been at war since I was 11.
I know.
Not war.
No, but in some sort of
like overseas.
But this movie that came out in 1988 is addressing the same thing. We keep coming back to this on every episode because I think it's just because it's where we are right now in 2018. And these movies that came out decades ago are coming back again because it's that same commentary.
Do you wonder at all if it is the people who are making the films, especially in this time period? I feel like, unfortunately,
like the mid to late 80s,
anywhere from like the 70s to maybe like the 89,
like Cold War
90s filmmaking is different.
Yeah,
but
absolutely, because that was the 90s. We were almost in, except for the Gulf War. Like late 90s until 2001 were relatively peaceful.
Anybody who lived through the 60s and 70s, like they have a specific lens they view war through. And I feel, do you ever wonder if it's because the creative people who are making these films, who the filmmakers.
They would have lived through the 60s and 70s by the time they were making their film in the 80s, right? So they would have been children through that.
Well, but what I was thinking is, do you think that the reason we see this recurrent narrative of like war is so stupid, war is idiotic, like why are you fucking doing this?
Because it is?
Well, not only is because it is, but because the people who are fighting the wars aren't making movies. They're too busy fighting wars.
Right.
The people who are like horrified by the maybe I'm generalizing here, but like the artists, the sensitive people, the fairly liberal utopian types, the people who want to dream and lay around and, you know, like read Ray Bradbury books and pick apples from trees.
Sounds amazing.
And they see war and they're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So when they make movies and put war in, we see it through their eyes. We see it through their lens. I literally, like, my tears, I had tears in my eyes when fucking Sally, when the
when
bomb
she's
rains down
yelling,
and
stop
she
it,
yells,
stop it. Oh
or,
my God,
well,
I have the same note. It's like a young child yelling, stop it, because she can't hear the rest of her story. And she sees how ridiculous it all is.
It was like...
Because she's a child. She's like, this is fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Stop it.
And it... Oh my God. Because
and then she runs up to the ramparts and yelling, stop it, and
she
throwing stones.
She throws
like,
a rock
dude.
at him. Like, pay attention. Stop it. Well, dude, I was like, look, it's all of us. Mm-hmm.
It's literally all of us in Sally.
Sally is all of the now I want to say rational and reasoning, but this movie kind of, but it's the lovers or the dreamers or the people who still have a heart. I know it sounds harsh because
but I mean, fuck it.
Yeah, absolutely. Fuck it. Like the people who have any empathy or care or who want to see a better world. Sally is us.
Yeah, we're standing on the
She literally
ramparts throwing
says,
stones.
and she has an amazing point in her first line. She says, "Stop it, or we'll all, emphasis all, be killed." Mm-hmm. Which is like, if you keep going, and I think that's definitely commentary because we see the atomic bomb later in the movie, but that's definitely commentary on the nuclear arms race of the world, where we find out again and again from like news statistics and all of the awesome fear-mongering media sources that try and keep us fucking terrified. But like, there's enough nuclear weapons on the planet. There are enough nuclear weapons to destroy all life on Earth.
Yeah, several times over. Yeah,
that's the world we live in. And she's like, Sally says it right there. She's like, if you don't fucking knock this like stupid weird shit chest thumping bullshit off, we're all going to die. Everyone will be dead, and I won't be able to hear the end of my story. Yeah, and it's like, oh God, Sally.
And Sally, you know, I don't dislike kids in movies, but a lot of times they're the worst part. You're like, is like, ugh. Sally is wonderful.
Yeah, she does a great job.
Yeah, she's not like that child actor thing where it gets a little grating, and you're like, ugh, they're like the child star, and they kind of know it. Like,
for me, it's when the kids, when the director just cannot get a natural reading out of a kid, where they're like, but I don't want to go to bed without my porridge. Right. Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes child actors are fun. Oftentimes I'm like, you just can't get a read. You're not good. You're a kid. You can't. You're not acting. You're just saying stuff.
But she's just good. Wonderful and natural, and she's
very much so. Yeah.
And the Baron and her have such that unique, like, not even a grandfather to granddaughter sort of relationship. It's more, I don't know. It's like she's guiding him in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, I love that when he's laying there dying, and he's like, I'm tired of all of these reasonable people who, don't have any imagination left, and the death of fantasy and the death of wonder. And he's laying there, and she goes, "Tell me what happens." And he goes, "No." Awesome.
Yeah, just no.
No. And she's like, "Tell me what happens." He's like, "No, let me die," or whatever. And she goes, "Tell me what happens." And his eyes, he does, you know what he does? He does John Hurt eyes, where they light up, and you just want him to be.
They twinkle.
His eyes twinkle. He literally John Hurts it.
Yep.
And his eyes.
You really want to hear this?
Really want to hear this, don't you? And he's like, you get the sense that right there, he's like, maybe imagination and wonder is not dead yet.
Because here it is.
And as long as that's alive, I'm alive too. And that's when he starts reclaiming his youth.
Yep.
By the way, I'm not going to say device because it cheapens it, but the thing that Gilliam does where every time Baron Munchausen experiences something impossible,
adventurous and impossible,
or adventurous or romantic, or something that it like inflames the heart and the imagination and the mind. Something I wrote down très fantastique at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime he encounters that thing, that like utterly like magical moment,
yes.
he gets younger.
Mm-hmm.
He becomes youthful.
But it's not divisive. Is that the word I'm looking for? No,
it's not.
It's not used.
It's not gimmicky or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's and he doesn't become like 20, but the visible signs of age and wear are
they start to wear away. The wrinkles in his neck are because he's not a young man. Even the actor playing, he's in his 50s, I would say,
probably.
Or 60s,
yeah, the
like
youngest we see him, he still looks in his 50s
he's
for sure.
Still older.
Yeah, definitely.
Than the two of us.
Yeah.
Not so much me because I'm good. but it's not like, oh my God, he's 20 again.
Right.
Now suddenly we have Jude Law playing Baron Munchausen. He's 20 years, 15 years
Gilliam
younger.
didn't Dr. Parnassus it.
No, he didn't.
It's all the same guy. It's just different makeup.
Dr. Parnassus.
Shout out, by the by, to the... Is that a Terry Gilliam movie?
Yes, it is. The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus is...
Accidental Parnassus. Terry Gilliam
There you
reference.
go.
I just said it because a bunch of different actors play the same guy.
Exactly.
But I was like, oh, wait, I think that's Terry Gilliam.
It is Terry
film.
Gilliam. And using theater again as a storytelling.
Never saw it.
Oh, my God.
I hear it's Heath Ledger's last movie, though, so I will check it out at some point.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like that... Fuck, you know what? Again, watching this movie... A couple times, I wasn't taken out of the movie, but a couple times I have several of... My dad gave me his whole book collection. I have several old fantasy collections, like short story collection anthologies with like George R.R. Martin and like R.A. Lafferty short stories in them. And I wanted to just be like, Carl, can I pause the movie and go and lay out in the grass and read fantasy stories for like a couple hours?
Oh, no, seriously.
And then we'll come finish it?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, dude.
Yeah, this makes me want to read like adventure stories and like, yep.
This movie is so excellent. Oh God, there's. I did write down my second note is Gilliam films look expensive as fuck.
They are.
I know you said he goes over budget a lot, but like the opening sequence, I'm like, this is Ben-Hur. I'm watching like Ben-Hur times 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
There's like there's like Oriental cannons happening. This is Turks, right?
Turks, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm like, there's big dragon cannons and there's full-size fucking towers with people on them. There's parapets, explosions, and fire everywhere. And also, that's a big-ass set. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe they renovated like a neighborhood or something, but still.
It's like that stage is outside. It's like a part of a... It's like, it's a corner of a town, essentially, and the stage is on.
Right, and then there's we see the inside, we see the walls. He builds a moon set, a moon city. He builds Vulcan's place. He does the cool, one of my favorite like special movie effects I've ever seen is when that ship is going across the like ocean of stars, which becomes the sand.
That's
so cool. But like watching the set pieces and then noticing that everyone is in period costume.
Oh, fuck.
Of like several different cultures.
In the end, when we are pulling back from the Sultan's tent as all the armies are gathering and the camera keeps pulling back and more army fills in the frame, it keeps pulling back and you're like, that's a lot of people. The camera keeps pulling back. That's a lot of people. And it just keeps pulling back and the frame keeps getting full of more and more people. I'm like, this isn't CGI.
No.
And everyone is wearing a costume, and it's not like a filler costume. Like, if they're like the 10th one back, you can just put a black hat on them. And you can wear jeans. It's fine. We'll
everyone's
never see
wearing
it.
full Turkish
Everyone
soldier
has
garb.
everything from their socks to their headpieces, completely clothed.
It's
like, holy fuck!
It's insanity because you're looking at probably like 600 extras or more.
Yeah, probably 600. I would say is
like
a fair
minimum.
estimate.
Yeah, but like that's an amazing number of extras. Also, by the way, I'm glad you brought that up. We were talking earlier about like the filmmaking, the camera trick. They're doing like this really long dolly pan back where they're dollying back. And as the camera passes two extras, they step into each other because they have to make way
for the cart.
Yeah. But when you watch it, it's almost seamless, but that little bit of motion as they close ranks adds to the scene because you are watching Baron Munchausen
Get surrounded. Yeah.
So the pan serves, it's not a pan, it's a zoom.
The technical
It's a dolly out. But yeah, the technical need to make room for the dolly cart as it goes backwards is creating an effect where like this ocean of humanity is slamming shut on Baron Munchausen right before he's about to be executed.
So
It's such a simple little trick to create that unbroken sea of humanity, but it adds so much to that moment, and the length of it. It goes on for so long.
Yeah.
He's just zooming out, still going back, still going back, still going back. Now there's horses. Still
now there are
back.
elephants with towers on them.
Elephants with towers, more people, and you're like, holy
shit!
Fuck, dude, wow. This army is very large. God, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Should we go through notes in order so we can kind of?
I guess so. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at because I don't want to miss anything that I mean, this is one of my favorite movies, just period. And as you know, and I've stated before, Gilliam is like top 2 directors. Him and Spielberg. Spielberg is anyway. We don't have to talk Spielberg about it, but no.
We can talk about Spielberg. Talk about Spielberg, man.
And I feel like they're similar in some ways, especially early Spielberg. I think that's why I'm drawn to them so much. Spielberg more grounded in reality, but if you watch like E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind, his earlier stuff where it's poking your imagination because they're fantastical movies but they're grounded in more of reality.
I would have gone Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones is very much so too.
Because this
is more like a Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Very much so. Oh my God, yeah. We're like, I was going Temple of Doom because when when you watch Temple of Doom and you see that giant underground vaulted cavern with the drums and the statues,
ripping living hearts out of people.
They're pulling a living heart out of a guy, Kalima, that. Step out of it for a second. Totally implausible.
Oh yeah. Fair enough.
Raiders of the
And I just said grounded in reality.
Right, but even Raiders of the Lost Ark, you're like, okay, we've got a golden idol, and they have a complex. This ancient culture has a complex
counterweight system
of counterweights that's going to flood the whole chamber, and a boulder's going to roll, and we've got pits and spikes.
Yeah.
And how did they get compressed air to fire the blowgun darts across the thing based on
some pretty strong people to push that boulder up the ramp?
But you watch it,
you don't.
You're there.
Yeah.
You're there 1,000%. Just like with this one.
Yep.
Like at no point, you realize it's all implausible, but you go for the ride.
Yeah.
At no point are you like, I'm calling bullshit. Everyone knows the mood.
Well, one of the first things you see the Baron do is ride a mortar shell across the battlefield. And then catch a cannonball as it's going the other way,
and land right back where he was. The moment for me that solidified the unbroken, awesome, fantastic mirror that Gilliam is holding up for us, that's showing us like our childhood, is when they tie a rope around the end of the moon. Yeah, because everyone on Earth
has seen that.
Except for the people who believe it's a hologram. Everybody on Earth knows that the fucking moon is the moon is not actually becoming a sliver. We're seeing a shadow. But in this world, without even a second thought, they walk to the tip of the moon and hang a rope around the tip of the moon and then climb down. And in a gloriously Looney Tunes moment, they're like, I've reached the bottom, and he's like, here's some more. He's like, where the fuck do you get that? And he's like, I cut it from the top. And he's like,
where else would I get the rope from?
Yeah, there's no more rope. I just cut it from the top. Now tie it, and we'll just keep going down. And they stay that way for like a minute. They're just hanging on nothing. And then all of a sudden
reality catches up.
It falls down. And I love them. I love that Bertold, yeah. That Bertold goes with it, where he's like, well,
you're the Baron.
That's why he's the Baron.
Yeah, exactly.
I never would have thought that. I would have thought that was physically impossible to do. You know?
It's like, I guess I should have thought of that. Yeah, that's why you're the Baron.
And I love, because you know what? I was right with them. I'm like, oh, wow. I guess this is working.
Take it from the top.
Cool, take it from the top. And they're going to go all the way down to Earth on 2 pieces of hair, and then it falls. But the reason you go along with it is you just watch them tie the hair to the tip
moon.
Of a moon.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're like, I guess that's not any weirder than the fucking moon thing that we just saw. Or the severed head world.
Severed head of Robin Williams. And
it's the elements of fantasy in this. And so this is going to sound absurd, but most of this movie will sound absurd. But so when we first see him flying through the sky in a ship carried by a hot air balloon made out of
knickers,
yeah, not pantyhose technically, but knickers,
the undergarments
of women. And he's talking to Sally and is like, well, she's like, where are we going? And he's like, the moon. She's like, that'll take forever. And you're like,
yeah, I guess.
That's
and also
right.
impossible.
But like when the ship flies in the air, you're just like, wow, it's so delightful because it's, God damn
it's a huge balloon made of
the biggest balloon you've ever seen.
Huge, and it's carrying the fake ship that they were using on the set,
right?
For the play of
right.
Munchausen. I'm like, it's the most glorious fucking
it's amazing.
It's the coolest airship ever. It's
and
just
part of the genius about why it works is Baron Munchausen takes it all so in stride, so matter of factly. He's like, it's almost like. For the beginning part of the film, we're like that rabble who's like, this is absurd, this crazy old man. And he's just like, they're like, okay, wait, you're going to build a hot air balloon out of knickers and tie a fake stage ship to it and then fly through the sky to the moon? And he's like, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that
is what I'm going to do.
Because I have to go find my friends so we can come back and save the town.
I got to go get my friends off the moon so I can come back and save your city.
From the Turks, dummy.
And then you know what? That's what he does.
And it's exactly what he does.
And he takes it. He's so sure that everything he does is going to work and takes it all so in stride that you are like, oh, all right. And then you're there with him. And I love when he's like, like, we're sailing to the moon. She's like, that'll take forever. And he's like, don't worry about it. It's fine. Then he's quiet for a second, smoking his gorgeous German clay tavern pipe, which unfortunately breaks on the moon. But he looks over at her and he goes, you of course know about the detaching heads. Like that would be common knowledge. And she's like, nope. And he's like, well, let me tell you about it. Their heads come off. And then
their heads come off to seek knowledge and understanding, and they leave their bodies behind for, to do body things.
Can we... before I get to the really quick note, I have two things I have three things that have to do with the hot air balloon and the boat. First of all, when he has them build this hot air balloon, we've seen a pretty disaffected populace so far.
Yes.
They're dirty. The audience who's watching the play have like cuts.
They're
like bleeding cuts on their faces. This is like a society in wartime. Yeah. This is like England,
in the middle of it.
England in the Blitz, exactly. Yeah. It's a very much keep calm and carry on situation.
Right.
They're like, let's go to the theater, and cannonballs are fucking just destroying the city.
Exactly.
Because what else are you gonna do? You sit at home and be all like, I'm scared. No, go watch the fucking play. But when he tells those ladies, like, first of all, I'm going to have to ask you to remove your knickers. And they're like, the next thing we see is two guys on the bellows filling up this giant fucking balloon made of knickers. And the crowd around him is like, they're excited. They're still incredulous and skeptical.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're all
excited.
They're like, look at this big ass balloon. What's he doing?
What is happening now?
Yeah, and he's part of it's like the weirdness of it, where they're like, we just have never seen anything like this. And guess what? That's what fantasy is.
And it's almost it's injecting them with a little bit of hope too.
He pulls the populace back into wonder and awe, hope, and belief in magic.
Yeah,
basically, like when the balloon like kind of fills up, and then when the boat gets off the ground and they're trying to hold it down, that crowd is fucking in. They're like, oh my god, dude, he got a huge balloon made out of underwear, and there's a boat in the sky. Holy shit, they all look like children. They're like happy children. And then when the soldiers march in, and dickhead Mr. Reason is like, everybody, arrest that man. And he's like, let go. Instead of like everyone just trudging along to the tune, he's like, let go. Let me fly in my underwear ship. They're like, do it. Let him go. Rock and roll, man. Like, even in that moment, the society that we end up with at the end that celebrates, and the society that basically just says like, fuck you to soldiers pointing their guns at a crowd of unarmed people. That society doesn't exist at the beginning of the movie.
No.
They are downtrodden as shit, but when they see underwear balloon fly away, we see that society again in the end, even though we find out underwear balloon may have been a fabrication.
May have been, but
it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't.
It's a Brazil ending, but this is the happiest Brazil ending I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I was so worried I was being Return of the King.
Oh God!
I was like, "Oh, are we gonna like cut to him like in that back room again, like just dying on the floor?" And it was I can't do it. I can't do it. If this ends bad, I'm going to just shoot my television.
And it does not.
It doesn't. But I love watching that happy crowd, like just seeing people be happy again.
Yes.
In a war-torn city. That's the job of fantasy, man.
It is.
That's exactly the job of fantasy. And not only is that the job of fantasy, Reason. I'm just calling him Reason, but it's the elected official who I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Like the logic guy, the paperwork fuck. He looks up and sees the balloon. So, and he's sitting there like, I'm signing my 10W40 form.
Yeah.
And he looks out and he sees the balloon and they're like, what should we do? And he goes, he won't get far on hot air and fantasy. And I almost fucking cried again, Carl,
Yeah.
Mr. making me watch movies that make me feel things.
Sorry.
What an amazing line. He won't
Yeah.
get far on hot air and fantasy. For two reasons, that line is incredible. One, in that moment, it gives you the thesis of the film.
Yep.
Which is establishing the importance of escapism and fantasy in these horrifically shit conditions. And two, at the end of the film, you realize that hot air and fantasy overcame oppression
Yes.
and freed these people and gave them back their lives and imbued their city with hope and showed that particular war, but war as a concept, the fallacy that it is.
Exactly.
Because when they open the gates in the end of the movie, there are no enemies.
Yeah. The tents have been burned. Yeah.
Carl, no, we can't talk about it anymore. We're trying. But dude, that we were talking about it through the lens of V for Vendetta when we were watching Brazil.
Yes.
Where like, what if the terrorists are the government to keep people cowed? And we talked about it in V for Vendetta, where explicitly the terrorist attack was the government used to keep people in fear
Yeah.
to help control people. In this movie, we finally see what happens when the people push open the gates and realize that there is no enemy, because there is only them.
There's only them, right?
Because it's not a town full of people, it's just people. And there is no other, because we are all that thing. We are all humans. And when they open the door and see that there is no enemy and there is no war, Baron Munchausen basically rides away into the sunset, not because he's not needed anymore.
No, but he wants to go have more adventures, I think.
Yeah, because we
It's
don't...
like the world is full of adventure and imagination again now.
We don't see him die. We just see him kind of peace out and
Yeah.
ride off into that glorious sunset over the dune or whatever. But I think, it's important that he doesn't die, because he was going to die because there was no place for fantasy and imagination. And now that village is nothing but fantasy and hope and imagination. And oh God, what an amazing... And then, so we jump to the end, but when that boat, the fake underwear ship...
Yes.
when we get, who shoots clouds better than Terry Gilliam?
Oh my God. When they're flying, the first time underwear ship takes off in those clouds, I'm like, fuck, dude. No one does flying through the clouds better than
Brazil.
Gilliam.
He does it in Brazil.
He does it at the very beginning of the movie, and all of the dream sequences.
I've never seen
right?
Time Bandits, but is there something in the clouds?
There's probably a couple.
I wrote down more of Gilliam's world above the clouds. My God, Mr. Gilliam, I love how you dream. The way that he sees in his head, because you said he shoots what he sees in his head.
Yes.
The way that he sees clouds, the way that he sees the sky.
That's the artist in him, because he started as an artist with
Visual
painting
artist,
and so that's how his brain works.
I remember the first time I got Bird on a plane. I went to visit my parents in Mississippi, and she'd never been on a plane before. And we were like flying, and we got into that like cloud where when you're in the cloud and it just looks shitty out the window. It's like just gray and like everything's kind of wet. And Bird's like, I'm like, so what do you think of your first plane ride? I asked like just 30 seconds too soon. And she's like, I don't know. It is what it is. It's kind of fun to be flying.
Then
you crested the clouds, and she had a window seat. I was like, you got to sit by the window. She's like, I'm not going to care. I'm like, you are going to care. You're an artist.
As soon as you broke the cloud ceiling.
Holy fuck, dude. She became like 8 years old.
Yep.
But like not in that like, oh my God. It was just, you could see like wonder fill her again for a sec. As we get older, it's harder for things to imbue us with wonder.
Yes, absolutely.
But seeing above the clouds and seeing her see what it looks like above the clouds for the first time, Jesus Christ, dude. So yeah, every time I talk about going anywhere, she's like, "Can we fly?" I'm
we
like,
fly?
"No, that's inconvenient
Right.
because it's a short drive and tickets are $1,000. So what are you talking about?
It's 45 miles away. We do not have to fly.
We don't have to fly." She's like, "But the clouds." I'm like, "Well, yeah, clouds might be worth $500.
They might be.
Seeing above the clouds."
At that point, take a hot air balloon ride or make your own underwear ship.
Correct. Yeah. Bird, why don't we just make an underwear ship? Look, I'm going to need you to remove your knickers. Just like, you bastard.
It's all a ploy just to get an underwear ship.
While we're talking about fantasy and like the wonder of fantasy and stuff, I have I mentioned a completely unrelated essay, but I have another Neil Gaiman essay from the same book where he kind of talks about something that I think is important to this movie. Neil Gaiman attended the first science fiction convention ever held in China because sci-fi is illegal over there. Like to write it and to have conventions and reading it, like it's banned literature because they have a really tightly controlled. That's how China works. So they had one. They're like, well, let's have a science fiction convention and maybe we'll start letting people read sci-fi, which is fucking unheard of. So Neil Gaiman was at it and he's there. He was one of the guest speakers or whatever talking about science fiction. And he went and was talking to a party official and was like, you guys have never done this before. You've never let people read science fiction before. So I'm glad you're doing it, but I'm just curious why. Like, what is the change? And the guy said, well, we build things, we make things, but we don't come up with them. You Americans design cell phones and design laptops and you send them to us and we make them, but we don't come up with any of them on our own. So we sent people over to America and we went to all of your top tech corporations and we asked a bunch of questions to the board of directors and the inventors and the engineers and the people who worked there. And one thing they all had in common was that they read science fiction and fantasy growing up. They were
inspired by Star Trek or Ray Bradbury or iRobot or
So the guy said, we think maybe that's not so bad.
Maybe there's something to that.
So outside of the realm of this incredible film, think about the power of that though. Science fiction changed the way a government treated its people. That changed it. Science fiction and fantasy changed a country.
Yeah, that's insane. But why? What other force is that powerful? The imagination and creativity, and that's like such a unique thing to human beings, right? What other force would be strong enough to change? Well, love.
But don't cheapen it. Love is. Think about. I mean, if you want to talk about like causes of war.
No, fair enough.
Love is a fairly.
And I'm a big fan of it. Don't get me wrong, but I felt myself being really cheesy just then.
No, I think it's.
This is why I said that. So I believe in the power of love. Trust me. But sometimes when you say it in this context, it sounds a little like.
I know. No, I'm 100% with you.
Cheesy and shit.
Had we not been having a conversation about like the power of fantasy and stuff, any other time they would have been like, well, what's your favorite emotion? I probably would have been like, oh well, love.
Duh. Why do you think paintings are made and music is written?
Yeah, that stupid old thing. I would have cheapened it too, but like now in this moment, this is almost like I feel like on Christmas Eve. Or on Halloween, how sometimes you're like, maybe there are ghosts.
Yeah, you get that really weird, like...
Where it feels like anything is possible. After watching this movie, I'm in like a temporary Christmas Eve where I'm like...
That's awesome.
I'm like, let us never cheapen how important love is.
Yeah.
Let us not cheapen the importance of just imagining things that could not possibly be and then believing them.
Yes.
Like, in my day-to-day life, cynical waiter that I am, like... You shit all over it, but...
Short story.
Go ahead, yeah.
Because it's relevant. So about the Christmas Eve thing and thinking that possibly, again, for a moment, like, is Santa Claus real? When I was on leave from the military, I was my second year in, I came home for Christmas, and my sister and I were hanging out in the loft in where the TV was. We'd hang out. It's like a middle attic. So like it was above the second story, but there was an add-on. So it was like the second... roof was there. Anyway, so it's like the loft in the house.
Right, platform 9 3/4.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we're sitting there, we're chilling out, we're just watching a movie, and it's probably like 1 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And it's Christmas Eve, and we're just like...
Is it, so it's 1 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day?
Oh, stop it!
It's Christmas Eve. I'm just trying to get my days
sorry,
right.
Yeah. And so it's the 24th going into
Gotcha.
it's 1 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day.
Gotcha. Okay, but we're still in Eve.
We're still in the Eve.
Yeah.
So we're chilling out and we're watching a movie, and we hear fucking sleigh bells outside, like circling the house, and then we hear like, we're like, are we hearing fucking sleigh bells right now? I'm like, no, it couldn't possibly be sleigh. I'm hearing sleigh bells. What the fuck is going? And then we stopped hearing them, and we like turn the movie down. We're like listening. We get up. We're looking outside the window. It's like, Dad couldn't possibly be. No, that wouldn't be a thing. Like, what the fuck is going on right now? And then we heard like things knocking on the roof, like stones and shit, and like almost like somebody walking. We're like, the fuck is going on right now? I'm on my second year in the military. My sister is still in high school. We're like, is fucking Santa on our roof right now? Like, we're not drunk. We're not doing drugs or anything. We're literally just watching a movie in the attic, and we're like, Sarah, if I look outside and there's fucking Santa Claus, I'm gonna lose my shit. And she's like crying almost, like shaking, like Carl. And then we heard sleigh bells again. I'm like, that's definitely fucking sleigh bells. It's 1:30 in the morning. No one's crazy enough to be out there with fucking sleigh bells.
Is there a logical resolution to this or no?
There is.
No.
But we.
Fuck you.
I know.
Okay, what's the logical resolution?
So we didn't even want to talk about it, so we didn't bring it. We brought it up to our parents the next day, and like, you kids, are you smoking the wacky weed in the loft? Because that's ridiculous.
Jazz cabbage.
And I can always tell my dad is like trying to get one over, and if we're like, ask him, did you do that? And he can always say, like, oh no, of course not, I didn't. Yeah. But my dad is like, what the fuck do you think is wrong with me? I'm 55 years old. Why the hell would I go outside with sleigh bells? You're grown ass adults. What the fuck is wrong with you? And my stepmom was like, I'm embarrassed to be your stepmom. I don't even know what to say right now. Like, are you guys putting us on? Like, what's the deal? So years later, like a couple years ago, I'm drinking beer with my dad on the deck, and he puts his beer down. He looks at me. He's like, it was me. I'm like, what are you talking about? It was you. He's like, remember when you and your sister thought, yeah, so it was me. I just thought you should know.
What a dick.
I was like, Dad,
what an asshole.
no. But anyway, but it was like feeling that moment of,
yeah,
I
hate your father. I hate him so much. Sorry, Carl. I just destroyed my sense of wonder. Everything's a lie. There's no truth in the world.
There's no truth in the world.
Oh my God, no! I'm gonna go watch The Machinist again.
Seriously.
That's so great, dude. What an awesome story, though.
Yeah. But having that feeling again. Like,
yeah, I love that feeling. Yeah. And you know, Gilliam does it really well. Mm-hmm. Like, Jarmusch makes you want to be an intellectual, but Gilliam makes you want to be a child.
Yeah, makes you want to be a dreamer. Yeah.
God, it's when we get to the moon in the panty boat. Oh yeah, you missed it. My wife is now with us, not on mic, but in the kitchen. So there's the storm, and they fall, and there's a big splash, and
then a sea of stars.
That is such a gorgeous shot, and I'm pretty sure that's full size too, because you can see them in the boat. So that's another set. That's another giant fucking set. So we get Sea of Stars, and then we see some ripples in the star. We think we're looking at the night sky, but then we see like ripples in the stars, and the boat comes in, enter stage right, and it comes, or stage left, and it comes in, and we're like, oh look, when have you ever seen a ship sailing through the stars? Literally. It's one of the most magical things I've ever seen. And then when you think like, God, this is the most magical thing I've ever seen, the stars, you see light starts to happen, and you realize that the stars are fading, and now the ship is sailing through the sands of the moon.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit. Oh my God, Gilliam just doubled down on the most amazing fantasy thing I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. So we're to the moon. We see the boat in the stars and the sand, and then we see Gilliam show us the facade of a city again. Oh my God, it's
those
so
little
good.
pop-ups of the facades of all the buildings, and it's like
well, I'm a particular favorite of the King of the Moon, and and then we hear fanfare, but it's tinny.
It's all tinny, like it's recorded.
It sounds like a really shitty like boombox of fanfare, and we see there's like it's like a wind-up clockwork version of like the hustle and bustle of a city. But there's no people to bustle, so the buildings are moving around, and buildings are coming forward, and buildings are receding, and it's a lot of, it's flash and fanfare and pizzazz, but it's all fake.
Yeah.
It's total facade, and I'm sure there's a billion things that we could say it's a reference to, but it has that feel of like a military parade to me, which is
it's just sort of fake and all fanfare.
Yeah, it's false. This is just for show. Mm-hmm. Not to be political, but it feels like, the videos of like the North Korean military marches where it's like, we are in really good shape, our country's wealthy, and then you're like, the whole country's poor and they have electricity for like an hour a day,
right?
And everyone's starving. So it's false. It's just for show, and then that show becomes a trap.
Yep.
And you're like,
it literally locks them in.
It literally locks them in. They're locked in by that false.
Mm-hmm. That's what I take it as.
It's amazing. It's so good. And then we meet Robin Williams.
You said the words that came out of your mouth were like, holy shit, that's Robin Williams.
Yeah.
It's like,
And you're like, it is.
Yeah, it is.
I feel like half this movie was just me going like, fuck, and then you going, And that was it. It's like that was our whole watching this movie experience. Me whispering profanity and you affirming
and
it.
going, yes, fuck indeed.
Yes, correct. Fuck. So I probably wouldn't make this connection if I hadn't just read Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. But the way that Baron Munchausen describes the detached heads and the way we see the detached head and body thing play out with the King and Queen of the Moon is very akin to Lewis Carroll's like magical potions and mushrooms that make Alice grow and shrink. Because in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Alice's head grows out of proportion to her body, where sometimes her head is really tall and gigantic and she can't see her feet or hands or her body, and it's just her head up in the clouds. And then other times her body grows gigantic and she's, her body's so big that her head is all out of proportion. Right. And a lot of critics or not critics, but people who have written like criticisms of the book or essays on the book say that that's a really apt metaphor for puberty, where sometimes like your body's like going,
you're like all crazy and out of proportion,
right? Your body's like knocking into stuff.
Yep.
And like there's a point where she grows huge in a house and she doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
So she's got a hand out the window and a leg up the chimney, and it's like your body's gawky and awkward, and your body's huge and unmanageable, and you can't control your body. And then other times you learn things and your head grows out of all proportion, but you've become detached from your body. I think it's the same sort of thing. And I think it's balance, because when their heads are off, especially the king,
he's very much different than the queen. Is almost the same with her head attached as disattached,
which I like what that seems to say. Which is that
when when the king's head is detached, he's very intellectual, but
pure.
also a little bit delusional too, because he thinks he created the universe. He didn't. He's just the king of the moon and hyper intelligent, but he's also completely insane.
Yeah, he's gone mad because he said he hasn't been back to his body at the time we see him for ages. He's just been away from his body. So when Robin Williams' head is off of his body, he becomes like this being of pure intellect, where he's just, he says like, I have comets to control and things. And I think that's that ego of I think the King of the Moon is kind of a parallel to the elected official. When you have just pure intellect and you just stay up in your head all day and you're not interacting with the world through your body, which is how Grant Morrison calls his body his meat suit. But when you're just in your head all day, you start to believe that you are master of all you survey.
Yes.
Like observable events. Like, well, yes, I've tracked the paths of all the not to critique science, but we've tracked the paths of all the comets and all the stars.
Comets were doing those things long before.
That doesn't mean shit. You're like, well, I know the path of every comet in this galaxy, and I know how every orbit of every planet works. It's like, awesome. What does that matter? Well, I know it. I don't fucking care. Why does that matter? What are you talking about? Have you been outside yet today? Well, no, I've been...
It's a beautiful day. You should check it out.
I've been tracking the comets, though. And it's like, awesome. Doesn't matter. You don't control it. Like, this whole clockwork...
But what if one is coming towards us? We'd want to know, but would that change a thing?
Would we be able to...
How would we be able to...
What? It's okay. There's a comet the size of the moon is going to hit the Earth. Can you stop that? Well, no, but I know it. Awesome. Doesn't fucking matter.
I'm going to go have a delicious cup of coffee and hold my girlfriend's hand and perhaps kiss her one more time before it impacts
something
the earth.
like that. Right. Like it's just because you're up in your head and you have all this knowledge doesn't mean you control or command
You
shit.
don't control any of it.
Exactly. But on the converse, like when you are just body, which I guess we see that, he's not that much better when he's whole.
Not.
But when it's just the body, it's like this oafish like clawing at her
and just trying
she's
to bone
batting. All the body's trying to do is bone the queen.
Yeah.
He's like batting at it. At least, I mean, even with the head attached, he's still totally boorish. But
yeah.
At least when the head is attached, the queen is able to reach something where she's like, well, eat something before we have sex.
Like, perfect.
He's like, that's a great idea. And he eats some fruit and she gets a temporary reprieve. Mm-hmm. So...
And I also love that when the detached head of the queen is rescuing them, freeing them, and she's making orgasm sounds, and Sally's like, "What are the sounds she's making?" Like, "Oh, well, the king is tickling her feet."
The king is with the queen's body, and he's tickling her feet.
And then we cut to the scene.
Oh, yes, no, yes.
And he's legitimately
he's actually tickling her feet. I have a note on that. I said, of course he's tickling her feet. This is a fantasy story.
Yes.
And again, the importance of escapism amidst the horrors of war, which is like... it's like that the Mad Hatter's Tea Party that happens in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, when she's trying to be like, why are you having tea time right now? And he's like, because it's always tea time here. And she's like, that's why. And he's like, because I upset time. And you're like, oh, time is personified and it refuses to interact with the Mad Hatter anymore, so he's frozen in time. It's totally absurd, but it's totally absurd in an absurd fantasy story, so take it as read.
Take it as read.
So, like, the fact that Robin Williams is actually tickling her feet. And there's definitely overt sexual references there.
Oh, of course.
Where he's like, you're awfully quiet. Oh, you're a pillow biter. And he keeps tickling her feet. And then later, there's a dark moment where he goes to slap her, but she doesn't have her head. So he misses and he goes, no head to hit. And you're like, oh shit. Robin Williams is an abusive king there. That's
moon person.
Yeah, the moon. So what we learned today is the king of the moon beats his wife.
Yes.
But like he like swings, and then there's a great moment where after Baron Munchausen cuts off the lock of the queen's hair and her head goes floating away back to him, she's still like having her feet tickled, and she's like, what's his name? Roger the king?
Roger is the king.
She's like, Roger, I'm coming. I'm coming.
Yeah.
And you're like, You are on your way to him in the sense that you are coming to him. But you're also coming to him. Way to go, Gilliam.
Yes.
What's this movie rated?
PG-13. I have the case.
It's right there. I will vamp. Bum bum.
Nice vamping.
Yeah. So
by vamping,
next,
by vamping,
I mean,
this is rated PG.
Wow. The amount. Okay, to give you a sense, listeners at home, not you, Carl, of how well Gilliam structures this movie, and the master. I'm gonna keep calling him a fantasist because
I think that's fair.
The master fantasist that he is. I thought this movie was rated R.
Yeah. There's decapitations, there's violence,
but there's nothing in this movie.
There's a quarter of an Uma nipple.
You do get a glimpse of Uma nipple.
Yep.
You do. There's naked women, but there's that Uma nipple. Maybe this
that Uma nipple.
Maybe this should be a PG-13, but like there's nothing in here I wouldn't show a 10-year-old kid.
And this was made after the PG-13 was a thing. 88, I think. Yeah. The PG-13 was firmly in the MPAAs. I
would say like this movie to me is totally safe for kids. There's nothing in here that would, I think, scare or upset children.
It might be like scary, like the Jabberwocky is scary.
Well, have you ever read Coraline?
I've seen the
film.
The film. I have not
There's
read.
a famous, not famous. There's a story about the publication of the book, which was released in 2 editions. There was an edition illustrated and released for children, and there's a hardcover edition released for adults because the publisher couldn't figure out which it was for.
Oh, shit.
So Neil Gaiman sent it to his publisher, and he's like, I wrote this children's book, Coraline, here you are. And she read it, and she's like, there's no fucking way we can publish this book for children.
For a kid. Okay.
This is terrifying. Neil, this is the
Well,
scariest
the cartoon's pretty fucked up,
Like,
too.
this is one of the scariest books I've ever fucking read. And he goes, read it to your kids and tell me what they say. And she read it to her kids, and she's like, you're right. They weren't scared at all. They saw it as an adventure story.
Yep.
So he has awesome interviews about it where he's like, the things that adults find terrifying, the kids don't even notice.
Well, because we're viewing and reading that through a filter of all of our terrifying life experiences.
Right, yeah.
We've learned that the world is a fucking scary place where a kid is just like, I want to go climb a tree and have an adventure. And think about the Wizard of Oz. Like, there's a lion, there's a man that's frozen, and there's a tin man, there's a scarecrow that's like, that's some scary shit.
I think a big part of it is that children don't appear vulnerable to children.
Oh, they do to us, though.
Adults,
because we want to protect them.
Yeah, we see kids and we're like, "Oh my God, don't go near that! Oh God, Jesus, don't hold that in your hand! Oh, don't look at that!
Right.
You're not supposed to see that yet." Kids are just like, "Oh, cool, look at that! There's a bunch of bees in this bush." Or
Right.
like, "Oh, I'm gonna climb this tree," and we're like, "Oh my God, you're climbing too fucking high! Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God!" But to that kid, the kid's like, "I had a great day climbing a tree."
Yeah.
We're like, "I almost saw a kid fall out of a
You
tree."
almost died today.
Right? So like that it's that thing where when I watch this movie, I'm like, this is an R-rated film.
Mm-hmm.
There's heavy social commentary and the horrors of war. Kids aren't seeing the horrors of war and social commentary.
They're seeing Eric Idle run really fast and super strong guy
Yes,
carrying
exactly.
like all the treasure of the Sultan's palace on his back.
The paperwork jokes, right over their
Oh, they
heads.
don't
The
even
bureaucracy,
fucking see that, yeah.
none of that matters. Like old guy, like the horror, the nursing home proxy that is the belly of the fish. We're like, oh my God, it's a fucking nursing home.
Yep.
It's just a bunch of old men turning gray, playing cards and reminiscing about
With death literally
Death
dealing
is
the
dealing
cards.
the cards, and they're just reminiscing about the old times, and they're gonna sit here until they die and never try and seize life. Kids are like, this is a slow bit before the
Right, this
the
is like a boring
superpowers
bit.
come back.
They're playing cards.
And they just-
then the horse knocks on the door, and here we are in Adventure Time
And they're
again.
like, yes, the horse came through the door, and oh, the snuff box is going to make the giant fish monster sneeze.
Yep.
You know, like that. This is 2 movies. I regret that it is impossible for me to see the version of this movie that a child will see.
Oh yeah.
I can only see this version, but this version made me feel
First
childlike
time I
again
watched
for a
it
while.
I watched it in probably '90, so I wasn't a kid. I was
Something
like
of a youth.
middle school, but still had enough of that like. And it was it was just the adventure story part of it.
Right.
Watching it, and like as I've watched it over the years, you do pick up on more and more. The movie changes,
Yeah.
based on your perception of it and based on your own life experience.
Well, I remember
especially
seeing,
the older you get, because
as you get older and older, I remember seeing Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail for the first time when I was like 9 or 10, and rewatching the movie as an adult. I've only seen it like 3 times, but when I saw it later as a grown up, I was like, oh my God, this movie's filthy.
yeah, it's real dirty.
But you don't notice it at all
No.
when you're young. You're like, oh, Camelot's doing silly stuff, and then you're like kind of shocked, but in a fun way when you're like, he cut off his arms and legs, and he's berating him as just a stump. This is so weird.
Yeah.
But you don't pick up on the like really filthy shit, like when Galahad goes and there's all the
castle anthrax.
The castle anthrax. Yeah, exactly. Like you miss all that.
Yeah.
I watched The Meaning of Life when I was like 10 or 11.
That's good. That movie has a lot of really heavy shit. Well, and there's
there's
how
this
to have a
sex
how to have
ed.
Sex ed.
Sex ed
Yeah.
is just them having sex, and then the end is like the guy gets executed or whatever, and he dies by being run off a cliff, being chased by naked women.
Yes.
And I watched it with one of my best friends at the time, who was also about 10 years old, 9, 10, 11, probably 10. And his older teenage brother watched it with us. And mostly everything went over my head. I've since seen the movie several times. I
Right.
love that movie. But I distinctly remember my first viewing where like the parts that stick from that watching of it were the guy eating too much and exploding, and the puke bucket was hilarious.
I've trodden in Messier's bucket.
Right, but when he, like, the fact that he's projectile vomiting into a bucket that's like 5 feet away, I was like, this is hysterical. And then I remember being genuinely upset, like actually disturbed by the organ reclamation people.
Yeah.
I was too young for that.
We talked about that a little bit on the Brazil one, Palin being
We did, yeah.
a little bit dark.
Yeah, but that for me was too much.
Yeah,
as a
we'll have you
10-year-old.
live with that, and then it gets really real.
But you kind of self-censor.
Yeah,
as
you do.
as a kid, because like I moved right on. I was like, ooh, that was
Because then there's a fun jaunty Dancing Through the Stars song right after
the
that.
wonderful universe
Uh-huh.
when they go through the refrigerator.
Yep.
But I remember at the end watching the girls running. And keep in mind, I'm like 10, so I'm like, I'm aware. I'm like, oh, naked ladies.
And they're bouncing heavily.
Yeah, there's a lot of bouncing breasts. It's the whole point of the scene.
Exactly.
Is the bouncing breasts, and I'm like, oh, bouncing breasts. Wow, this is didn't affect me though. I wasn't
Right.
like, oh yeah, look at those girls. It was just like,
Right.
oh, naked ladies, and it was more fascination of like, that's what women look like naked.
Right.
That's crazy. Look at those naked people. And we're both sitting there watching the movie all quiet, and I remember there was a moment where like my friend's older like teenage brother looked at us just like, you fucking poor kids. And he goes, you guys aren't getting anything out of this, are you? And we're like, well, what do you mean? This is funny. Look at how funny it is. He's like, fuck. He just goes back to watching it. I remember when Death comes to dinner, and
my
he
God.
he just
The
yells at
salmon
them.
moose. Yeah.
The salmon moose. Shut up!
Yeah.
Shut up, you Englishmen! Oh my God, that at 10, I was like I was a smart kid, but not like particularly advanced. Like I didn't know about like naked people and like drug jokes and shit. I was just like, he is funny. Agatha Christie, yeah, English people are snooty.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, you could. I wish I'd seen this as a kid, but I think that's important too, which is kids can watch almost anything, and they'll pick out the stuff they want to see. Now, obviously, like, don't show them Saw. Don't show them Hostel.
Don't show them I Spit on Your Grave.
Definitely don't show them I Spit on Your Grave, because there's not a whole lot there that they can
Yeah.
pull out of that movie.
Jaws might be even a little too much, but maybe
You think?
not. No,
Like, I think you could show Jaws. Like, what's
Jaws.
the girl? What is the most horrific thing in Jaws? Is
It's when he gets bit in half by the boat
What's
at the
his
end.
name again?
Captain
Cooper's the one who shoots the thing at the end, so it's whatever.
Keel Craig. No, fucking.
Kill Craig. Apricot Brandy guy. So when he gets eaten by the shark, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Seeing I mean, we don't see what's left in the bucket, right?
No.
But like when they take out when the coroner takes out that fucking
bucket.
metal bucket, and that's all that's left of the kid. But I think kids would gloss that. They'd just be
they
like,
gloss it.
they don't have the images in their head yet to fill in the blanks.
Right,
That
where
makes
we
that
do.
so upsetting for us.
Whereas Saw is you see all the blanks, so don't take your kids to see Saw.
Don't see your kids to take Saw, but like
Don't see your kids to take
don't
Saw.
see your kids to take Saw. Don't take your kids to see Saw. To see Saw.
To see Saw.
Don't see Saw with your kids.
Yes.
All right. Sorry. Back to the Adventures of Baron Munchausen. I liked. Okay, the whole scene with Vulcan, where are they? Are they on the?
They're in a volcano.
They're
In the heart of a volcano.
On the
In
moon?
the center of the earth.
No.
They fall.
They fall to
from
the Earth.
Yep, because we get the actual globe.
Oh,
Earth.
you're right.
And then they fall
night
through
on
a volcano
Earth.
into the center of they're in the center of the Earth, essentially.
And then they go through the
They fall
whirlpool
through
to
the
the
other
other
side.
side of the
Yes.
planet, and then they get carried to the correct side of the planet inside the belly
Inside
of a
of a
fish.
giant fish, yes.
Got it. We're all back on the same page. I like that Vulcan's legs are messed up. He has those
Like
braces on his
on.
legs because that's accurate to the myth. They even talk in those myths of Vulcan and Venus, the Roman myths. Vulcan it's pointed out that his legs are gnarled and twisted, and he's like a disgusting imp-like figure. So Gilliam clearly has his source material like firmly in hand. Speaking of legs, I noticed in that same scene, do you remember when Berthold's young and we have the flashback to the Sultan's place and his calves are fucking huge?
yeah.
They're so skinny when he's an old man. His calves are like normal
he has none of
sized calves
that
again.
running speed muscle left anymore.
Yeah, I really liked that attention to detail. We talked about it with Brazil with like the posters on the walls
Yes.
referencing other like Gilliam has every moving piece, every square inch of every frame is there. He's not using all of them, but he's aware of them all so that he can use them. And except for one crew member who was standing in the wrong spot.
How funny is that? Oh.
I could tell you were like pissed when I mentioned it.
Yeah,
you were like,
I'm like, you just took some of the magic out of this.
No, you
Maxwell.
bastard. It's during the
Well, you have
balloon scene.
1,000 people in a shot. Like, fuck.
You gotta have a wrangler.
And it's another one where it dollied out a lot.
Yeah.
So it's like, fuck.
It's covering a lot. There's not a lot of room to hide.
No, and so you caught one guy watching.
There is a guy in like this medieval village wearing like a blue jacket with writing on the back.
With writing on the back, which is probably the title of the last movie he was working on or something like
it's
Rocky 2 or something.
Yeah, this was Scarface.
Yes.
No, but there's a guy wearing like a jacket with print on the back, and you're like, and he's dead. He's almost dead center in the frame too. So it's not like you catch him on the edge.
No, he's right there. You can almost read what the words say on the back. Of
well,
his
when
jacket.
I get the Blu-ray,
I'll
freeze frame that, and I'll be like, the last movie he worked on was Deep Throat,
right?
Whatever. Carl, you're gonna love this. He worked on Behind the Green Door.
Behind the Green.
It was
shit.
It was a pornographic film that he worked on, and then he came to this one.
It's an art house porn film.
You're right, and actually one that I would like to watch at some point as a Patreon exclusive. I've been thinking about this.
Fair enough.
So anyway,
Caligula next then.
Oh my God, Carl, we could totally do that. That would be awesome. Tasteful, independent art house porn films. That could be
check.
That could be a Patreon month. All right.
Connor is just fist bumping the air.
Connor's like, yes. He's gonna tell all his friends, and we're gonna just be making bank that particular month. So when Vulcan, okay, first of all, we can't glaze over that Uma Thurman is like smoking as Venus.
I have her written down several times as just incredibly beautiful. Like she is striking in this.
Yeah,
she has a look about her. It's not like the girl next door, but there is a uniqueness to her facial features, especially, that make her beyond beautiful, in my opinion.
I love a quote. It's Edgar Allan Poe. He says, "The difference between a true beauty and a shop window dummy is some strangeness of proportion." Which is, if you are perfectly symmetrical and perfectly conventionally beautiful, you are perfectly boring. What makes a true beauty is some flaw or some oddness, some twist. You have to take that perfect beauty and bend it just a little, 3 degrees, and that makes true beauty. Because when I think of, there's a great, I can't remember, there's a Joe Rogan podcast where they had a psychologist on, and he goes, all right, think of a beautiful woman, to Joe, and he's like, okay, got it. And he goes, now think of a hot woman, and Joe goes, oh, because it's different things.
Yeah,
totally different things. And there's a whole like area of study about this, about what it's like evolutionary biology,
right? Because there are things that we are keyed into, like hips, breasts, that are just like, are you able to make a child with this person and continue on the species?
And
like,
there's like a bunch of theories about them which aren't important to the film, but the idea is that there are certain triggers that make like sexually attractive. There you go, sex, yes. And then there are certain triggers that say like, learn more about you, get to know you, become your soulmate, so that you and I can spend forever together. And that's the difference between hot and beautiful. And actually, Bird and I have talked about this, because I've always thought that Uma Thurman is just stunningly gorgeous, totally beautiful. And Bird disagrees. She's like, I don't know.
A lot of people are like, do not find Uma Thurman like to be beautiful or that like. For the first time I saw, I think a lot of people, like, Pulp Fiction is the first time that you see Uma Thurman, right? That's little did I know. I didn't know she was Uma Thurman when I saw this movie. This is the first movie I saw with her, but I didn't know.
Pulp Fiction was my first Uma Thurman. No, Paycheck was my first Uma Thurman.
And I remember being like really like sort of mesmerized. I mean, she's wearing that. She's got the black hair with the bangs and everything.
She looks like no other person on the planet.
But looks like no other person on the planet. And I was so just like caught up in that.
Captivating.
Thank you. That's the word. Just captivated by her appearance and her performance in that. And in this, she is nothing but she's playing a fucking Greek god essentially, or I think what is.
She's Roman. If she's Venus
would be Roman, right?
Venus is Roman. Aphrodite is Greek.
Aphrodite is her sort of equivalent in the
Right.
Okay, so no one else could have played Venus.
I agree 100%. I was trying to put people in there.
Doesn't work.
And you
I was like, you don't even say a name. Doesn't work.
Well, there are like, because I can think of other beautiful actresses
Absolutely.
that you can put in there, and it would be like, wow, yeah, that's amazing. But there's something about Uma Thurman. Well, maybe it's because we've seen. I don't think it would be right. I don't think anyone else would be right in this particular world, in this particular film, in that particular portrayal of Venus. She's perfect.
Yeah.
Which is what Venus is. It's perfect, and it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
I fall in love with her every time I watch this movie. I fall in love with Venus.
You go with Baron Munchausen when you see his face, and all decorum goes out the window.
Yes,
because Vulcan comes
he's
over. And he's like,
I'm gonna go fuck your wife.
He's
now.
like, hi, Baron Munchausen, over here. My name's Vulcan. I'm super badass. You just saw that I have like the most powerful nuclear weapon of all time in my arsenal, and all I do is make weapons and kill people. And that's my wife you're looking at. Want more tea? And Baron Munchausen's like, no,
I'm gonna go dance with your wife.
Yeah. What about that though? Like how I'm just gonna go do that because I don't fucking care if you kill me.
Right?
It's amazing. And then he's like, I kind of like the dichotomy there, which is not the dichotomy, but the contrast between how Vulcan treats Venus and how Baron Munchausen treats Venus. And Vulcan takes some coal and crushes it, and he's like, look, it's a diamond. I made you a diamond. And she's like, oh, no, thank you, a diamond. And they throw it in a stack of diamonds. Yeah. And all Baron Munchausen does is pay her a compliment.
This is the difference. Vulcan gives her something beautiful, and the Baron Munchausen treats her like she's beautiful.
Yeah. Damn, Carl. Fuck yeah.
Right?
Way to go, man. Jesus. That's there's a famous quote. I think might be okay, this is gonna sound bad, but it's either attributed to Casanova or Antonio Banderas. One of those two.
I can see that being confused.
You understand my confusion.
Absolutely.
But I think it's one of those two
I was very
people.
sexually confused the first time I saw it.
Oh my God.
Like,
you watch Once Upon a Time in Mexico and you're just like, you see him and you're like, I've never felt this way before about a man. And then he talks and you're like, nope, man, I guess.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, and then by the time the credits roll, the credits like clear your mind of him. You have to watch a different movie after you watch an Antonio Banderas movie, or you just leave your wife.
You're right.
And be like, I have to track this man down. Right. Or you have to watch the SNL skits featuring I can't remember the actor's name, but featuring the guy playing Antonio Banderas, just unbuttoning his shirt more and more and more, and just shutting the women up constantly to be sexy. That's a good palate cleanser.
Yes.
But no, the quote is, if you cannot make a woman feel beautiful, she will never go to bed with you.
Yeah.
And that's right, that's so right, where Vulcan gives her something beautiful and Baron Munchausen makes her feel beautiful.
Yeah.
Or tells her that she's beautiful. Oh, it's amazing. And then she like gets all up in his business and I'm like, Carl, you're going to have to leave for like 5 minutes. 5 to 5 seconds.
5 to 5 seconds.
5 to 5 seconds. Just get out of here. Yeah, she's great. And I kind of liked the fact that we see her as a villager. She is a villager.
Yeah. Everyone that we are
run into in the world
are there as either the actors portraying the character, like Bertold, or the...
Yeah, I noticed you obviously noticed the players. Mm-hmm. The players show up as...
The villagers are also there, too.
I noticed Uma Thurman, but I didn't notice anyone... No, I noticed the guy who plays Vulcan, too, but he's only in there for like a second.
Hot second, yeah.
But I wrote down, I like that because it's a tale that's told.
Yes.
We find out that he's up on stage and he's telling...
Right. But it's not like it's not cheapen.
At all. I wrote that. Oh my God.
Amazing.
I wrote that exact thing. I wrote down, was it all a tale? And if it was, is this not it? If it was, the film is not cheapened at all. The happy lie is the happier ending, because we get a real world triumph. The movie does end with the citizens opening the gates and finding there is no enemy and reclaiming their lives. But I like that Baron Munchausen, he kind of freed them, right?
Yes.
But so he tells them this big fantasy story. Right? He tells them this wild adventure where islands are secretly fish that are monsters that eat you, and inside their stomachs are your old friends. Right. And he tells them a story of a mad king on the moon and meeting a Greek goddess and dancing among fountains and all this stuff. But when he tells it to them, he weaves them into it. Remember we talked about fantasy in the last episode, the episode before last, when we talked about Brazil.
Yes.
Where when you go into a fantasy story, when you escape, you come back with tools, and you come back with hope, and you come back with new strength. That's exactly what the Baron does when he tells the story, because he tells them the story of them. He's like, this, and you can just see him telling the story where he's like, and the shell opened, and there, in her splendor, Venus, and he looks down, and he a hand or points a sword or cat winks or throws a flower to that
Uma Thurman,
Uma Thurman's poor village girl,
and she becomes Venus,
and she sees Venus in herself, and now she's a little more than she was a second ago because of a story that an old man is telling on a stage. And he weaves them all into it. And so at the end, when reason points all its guns at them and says, if anyone disobeys my order, I will shoot you, they all just smile and walk past the guns.
They sure do. The reality is powerless at that point.
Yeah, in the face of fantasy, reality is powerless. It's such an amazing movie. Such an amazing movie and idea. Before we leave Vulcan and Venus, and the most metaphorical hammering ever.
Yes.
Come on, like
tang, tang,
again, like
tang, tang.
It's PG, but Vulcan grabs Venus and some hammers just start going, and you're like,
the forges of the earth are relit.
This scene is being they're hammering.
Yes.
They're being hammered. Hammer.
It is now hammer
time. It's hammer.
It is literally hammer time.
Oh, and that was a weird little beat right there before they kissed, too.
Oh, it was a little like, is she okay?
Well, it was the beat before that, actually, where, she's dancing among, like, the fountains, and she's kissing Baron Munchausen, and Sally goes, like, he's making out with your wife. He's making out with your wife. And he goes in there, and he's like, you fucking bastard, I'm going to throw you and your kid and your little dog, too. And he throws them all into the
calls
whirlpool.
her a whore, calls her a strumpet.
And turns around, and she's like, I'm sorry, did I excite you? And you're like, is this a cuckold thing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Vulcan's like, oh, yeah, tell me how his lips tasted. And then like goes for the kiss, and you're like, But again, 11-year-olds are not picking that up.
Not at all.
All the weird people,
dirty old men are like,
dirty old guys who've spent like 150 to 300 hours on Pornhub.
Did you just save some of his semen for me?
Exactly. Fucking exactly. We're like, oh my God, it's like that video that I watched 700 times last week. Or whatever. And the kids are like, come on, get past the kissing. What happened to the kid?
Right.
And then the kid is falling through the sky into an upside-down ocean.
Yes.
But we're all still back there being like, oh my God, she
snowballed him.
Yeah. Let's get serious.
Yes.
But before we get to the most amazing upside-down ocean thing I've ever seen, we have to talk about what is perhaps the most disturbing thing in this entire film, which is when Vulcan shows Sally, the little girl, the atomic bomb, and explains what the bomb does. Because the Adventures of Baron Munchausen, there's cannons and swords, so this is a weapon of the future, and I think it's important that this is the only anachronism that we see in this movie, other than that dude's Letterman jacket or whatever the fuck. But they're constructing it. Like he says, I'll build weapons,
newest weapon of war.
I'll build weapons for anyone who has the money to pay for them or whatever, and it's a transcontinental radar-directed ballistic nuclear missile. And the little girl looks at it, and she goes, what does it do? And he says, it kills the enemy. And she goes, all of the enemy? And he goes, all of them. And all their wives, and their children, and their chickens, and their cats, and their dogs, and their bugs. And he's like, all of them. As he says it, you realize that's what atomic bombs do.
Yep, sure do.
And then that's horrifying enough, but then he goes on to say,
and it says, and all you can do it from 1,000 miles away. You don't even have to see them. You just push a button.
Yeah. I think his exact wording, I didn't write it down, but his exact wording is, and you don't even have to watch them die.
You don't even have to watch them die, yes.
Which is so... We've talked about drones on this show more than I ever thought we would.
Oh, yeah.
But how fucked up is that? 1988,
Yeah.
and Terry Gilliam is recognizing and showing us the horror of the new ease of war, which is like, let's just play a brain game really quick. If we go ahead.
So after that is said, and the push of the button, you don't even have to look at them. And then Bertold says something equally interesting. He's like, well, where's the fun in that?
Where's the fun in that? Yeah. Which is also upsetting.
Right?
Well, for me, it makes sense because when you watch all the battles, when you watch the wars that we're watching, they're not. We are not watching the true horror of war.
Right.
We're watching an old man's adventure story of war where you're dropping
Slinging ships on
and you
people.
use a mouse to scare the elephants.
Yeah.
This is not true war. What Vulcan is showing us in the middle of this fun fantasy story is true war. The true horror and hell of war. And these fantasy characters who are on a grand adventure are kind of horrified by that. But they're like, well, where's the swashbuckling good time
Where's the fun in that?
and like we don't see Quentin Tarantino beheadings. When
Right.
Baron Munchausen chops off heads, it's funny
Like paper mache. Like it's,
because this is a fantasy of war. What Terry Gilliam shows us with his was not weird. I will not cheapen this moment when he shows us the atomic bomb. He's like, oh, by the way, all you people who are watching this movie, I want you to just keep in mind that fighting and combat looks fun on screen, but it's fucked up that if it was this movie, he's an American. So if America is like, if this is true, this is not just a brain experiment. It's true, and especially in our current administration, not to get political. But you could just sit there in your chair and you could say, just if you wanted to, you could
eliminate them.
if you were like, I don't like Argentina. I just never liked that country. Make a phone call, hang up your phone. Argentina no longer exists. All of the people in Argentina are dead.
And their dogs.
And their cats, and their chickens, and their wives, and their dreams, and all the favorite jokes that they used to tell, and their favorite dishes. Gone. Completely gone. And this is I told this to Bird the other day. I think we talked about it even in Brazil, about North Korea, about why North Korea hates us, and how most people don't know the numbers, which is, people are like, oh, that crazy dictator. But in the Korean War, we killed, I think it's between 10 and 20% of their entire population. We killed up to a fifth of their country
Jesus Christ.
in war. And to give you an idea of how easy war is now, most people don't even know that we had a war with Korea.
Right. Isn't that fucking scary?
Go ask some people. Be like, so, like, what was the war when we fought North Korea? And they're like, well, that hasn't happened yet, but they're making nukes, so we got to be ready for them. They're making
it was the Korean
War. They're making
My
nukes
grandfather fought it.
because we killed a fifth of their country. Like that. Oh my God, war is too easy, Carl. War is too easy. If we,
it's so easy now. It's push a button. It's the drone thing we were talking about last week.
it's detachment and it's space.
Yep.
I don't know if I brought this up, but do you think that war would be as prevalent if all we had to fight it with were axes?
Well, we did that before.
We did do that before,
Yeah.
but now, can you imagine?
Oh, now? Oh, fuck no. No one would go to war now.
Right. Now, back in the
They'd be
day,
like, wait, I have to pick up an axe, but back in the day, that's how wars were fought.
Because,
the only thing
well,
that's changed is technology and the ease of killing another
right,
human
and
being.
you just woke up and like hoped that parasites didn't kill you that
Right.
day, or that you didn't get a cold
It's
and
like
die.
it was all axes and arrows and shit until gunpowder was invented, and then it was like a whole other level of shit.
Right.
It's like we've always killed each other.
Yeah,
It's just
we do it with
the
rocks.
means it's become easier and easier and easier over the centuries because of advances in technology.
Right.
Where now it literally is a push of a button. But I think if now for some reason we wake up tomorrow and there's no
Reset button,
reset button on all of that, and we had to pick up an axe to go fight our enemy, I don't think there'd be a very small percentage of people that would even consider that to be like, fuck no. Are you kidding me?
And I like to believe that a big part of it would be that it takes a different level of hatred and animosity to kill someone that close.
With your hands,
Yeah.
essentially, with a tool, with
Because
an
when
implement.
if you're a mile away and you pull a trigger and somebody falls on a little screen that you're looking at, or if you are sitting in an air-conditioned office and you click your mouse and
You
a
still are
building vanishes,
aware.
You're aware.
As a human being that you just ended someone else's
There's
life.
a difference between that.
And feeling the bone break and
my
having
God,
the
yeah.
blood on your own skin.
Yeah. I think I was going to say, I think war should be made progressive in a thinking society. War
should be more
made
difficult,
progressively more difficult, until it's impossible. Mm-hmm. God, I'm so sick of war. Stop it, or we're all going to die.
Listen to Sally. Jesus Christ.
I like our little hippy dippy.
I know. I like how we go a little
podcast. It's good. It's good.
It's our goddamn soapbox. We do what we want with
it. It is, and you can't. It's weird. You can't.
It's hard to watch a movie like this that came out in 1988 that has a moment in it like the atom bomb, and not have that discussion.
Especially in the world where it's still relevant. It's weird because a lot of films from this time period, especially there aren't really many utopian films. A lot of them are like 1984 films. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people seem to predict that things would be better. Like, no, we're going to get rid of all this nuclear escalation because people live in terror all the time. This is no way to live. Fast forward. Like, I interviewed my grandma once about what it was like to live through the 60s and the Cold War for a school assignment. Mm-hmm. And she was like, you would never understand the fear. Like the fear and the terror. You would step outside on your porch and not know whether today would be the day that the Russians would drop a bomb and we would all be dead. She talks about how she used to look at my dad and his brother, my uncle, and she'd be like, I would just sit and look at them and then tell them to go outside and play and just cry because any day
that could be the day.
That could be the day. And then I was thinking about it recently because I talked to her on the phone every Sunday. I was thinking about it recently and I was like, since 9/11, in a weird way, that's how we've all been living for like 2 decades almost, mm-hmm. which is any day could be the day the terrorists come and like who knows when another school shooting will happen, or like this was fucked up. I saw 2 movies yesterday, and when we sat down in our chairs, the first thing I did.
I hope there's not a gunman that comes in.
Yeah,
every time I go to a movie since the Dark Knight shooting.
Since the Dark Knight shooting,
I'm always like, there's that little. I don't dwell on it, but I have that thought.
Yeah, I have that thought too. What if someone here has a gun?
Yeah,
dude, that's. So it's not the fear of the bomb wiping us all out. It's a more personal fear of our fellow man, and that's the world we live in now.
Yeah.
And that's scary, and that's why fantasy is important.
Yep,
that's why Baron Munchausen, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, is important. This is an excellent film. I'm so fucking glad that you picked this movie.
It's no Cemetery Man, but.
No, honestly, I think we know what the best movie of the year is going to be after watching Cemetery Man. I can't wait for you to hear that episode.
I can't wait either.
There's literally 50 seconds where we do nothing but laugh. It's like almost a minute of time. I tracked it because the waveform gets really small because we're laughing really high pitched. It's like this long on the screen. It's absurd how long we laugh. I think it's interesting that everyone is kind of a reverse. His four like servant people.
He calls them servants, right?
The fast one is slow, not only physically. Mm-hmm. He's also really forgetful too.
Yes.
So he's slow, like physically and mentally. The big doltish brute guy has become delicate and meek. Like when he's trying to stop Vulcan from, rather than just grabbing Vulcan, he's like, I really don't think you should. What if you just hold on?
And that's what he's happy with. And he found himself, he wants to be dainty, not lugging heavy things around. They call me midget here, and I find that to be splendid, I think is what he says.
He likes it. Yeah. He's like redefined himself in his life. Now,
it's bliss is what he says.
It's bliss. Now,
call me midget down here.
And then Bertolt says he's gone funny. In 1988, I see what Gilliam's doing. In a weird way, I can see how that could create a bit of a complex reading in 2018. I could see how that might be read problematically, but I think the point that Gilliam was getting at was that as these people have aged, they've forgotten who they truly are.
Right.
It's not a choice. It's that they've aged away from their true selves.
Yeah, in 2018, that could have a different read to it.
You could read that as like anti-trans.
They've lost who they are.
Right. That's the point. He's not. It's clearly given, especially given like how he's telling stories and his like inclusiveness and. There's nothing troubling about his intentions there. No. It's just us. It's like kids watching a movie or adults watching a movie. It's us, our jaded 2018
The man that can see 1,000 miles is blind. The one with the amazing ears can't hear. Like
like it's all reversals.
And the brute is dainty, and the
And I like that when we have the complete set, when they are all back together, that is when we get our nursing home stand-in. Where the death is dealing the cards, because it's it's a lot of things, but I think it's comfort. There's a comfort in groups thing.
Well, that's why the Baron sits down and starts playing cards, and Sally, the child, is the one that's like, "What the fuck are you doing? There's a city in danger. Everything's fine." And there's a comfort in that, right?
Right.
The group is back together.
The group is back together, and I talked to my brother about this, which is you ever notice some friends, some of your friends have stuff in the future, stuff they want to do, goals, dreams, and they're moving forward. But then you meet other of your buddies from high school, and all they do is talk about high school.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, "Oh, do you remember the big game where you scored your touchdown or whatever the fuck?" Or, "Oh, you remember prom when we got so?" And I'm like, I'm only 28. I graduated when I was 18, so that was 10 years ago. But even at 10 years, I'm like, why are you still talking about this?
Right.
Like, what are you doing now? Are you doing anything now? Well, I'm working. I work a lot. That's awesome. That's no fucking way to live.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? But like, that's what we see happen.
Yeah.
When the gang all gets back together, they first thing like, the good old times back when we were alive. We're dead now, and they all sit at their table and they start playing cards, and you get the sense that they would just reminisce about like our grand adventures until they die. And you're like, that is a nursing home. Terry Gilliam is showing us an old people dying in a convalescent home, and it's haunting. Mm-hmm. It's so fucked up to watch especially because you've seen Baron Munchausen. Because when Sally wanted to know how the story ended, his eyes lit up again, and you see this old man reclaiming, and it gives you such hope because the Imagination trilogy. Yeah, like, I'm dissatisfied. I don't want to just die as an old person. No. And he goes on an adventure. Yes. And then he
brings all of his friends with him.
Right. He brings his friends with him. He betters, not only does he, I was going to say he like betters their lives, he betters an entire society. He essentially metaphorically saves humanity by the end of this movie. But in that one moment, you see what could happen instead. If as you age, you just settle. You sit around your card table and you die. The town gets destroyed
by the Turks and you die slowly with your friends.
You have to engage or we're all dead. Yeah. We're all dead. Like, oh my God, this movie works on so many levels.
Well, death is constantly pursuing them through the entire movie.
Yeah.
Like in a very real way, like the marionette of death. The actual
big,
physical
like, Muppet.
Yeah, which I find fascinating. I love the marionette work in a lot of Gilliam's movies.
Where else did we see death? Cemetery Man.
Cemetery Man.
We see death in Cemetery Man. Man, there's a through line through your movies.
I know, dude. It's weird.
Paperwork and death.
Well, I did turn 40 this year.
Yeah, very telling that your birthday month this year is paper.
I turned 41. As this comes out, I'm probably 41 now.
So when this comes out, you'll be 41. Are you in the second week? Your birthday, second week or third week?
It's July 18th, so it'll be
this might come out like on your birthday for all we know.
Fuck me.
So there you go. Paperwork and death. The Carl Hartley story. That's what we'll put on your tombstone. We'll just put. It'll be your tombstone will be a filing cabinet drawer open, and it'll be all files.
But you have to send in a form to get to my grave.
Right.
You have to like file the appropriate paperwork. Right. And then there's more files.
It'll dispense a flower, but the flower will have a reference number attached to it, and you'll have to put it in the corresponding vase, but that vase won't exist because you didn't fill out the right paperwork for the vase. And on that file, when you ultimately do get there after 26 hours of being at your gravesite, a little message will come across the screen and it will say paperwork and death, the Carl Hartley story, and then the date of your birth and death, but it'll be wrong.
Right. Actually, I won't even be dead. I'm still alive. I'm like, the fuck is going on?
Yeah, it was a clerical error. They'd buried somebody else there who wasn't dead yet. We're going to pull a full Brazil. It was a fly. A fly got in the death certificate. Oh, my God.
It's Carl Hatley.
Carl Hatley. Oh, Carl Hatley died.
Which is how some British it's Carl Hatley. Or Scottish.
Or I was going to say Australian. Yeah. That was almost like... that was almost... Hey, look over there.
It's Carl Hatley.
Man, I don't think I've really got anything else for this movie. I just loved, like, I wrote down, because at the end when he returns, he saves the city. The final battle is a riot. It's so fun.
I love every moment of that final battle. Is something cool and fun, like when you have Bertle chasing the bullet. The way that's shot is really cool.
That's amazing.
He goes to grab the bullet and it burns his hands, so he has to grab a piece of armor to deflect it, and it ricochets off of 18 things and shoots the guy that shot. I'm like, just so much fun.
The mouse scaring the elephant, spinning the boats around, like shooting the blade of the executioner's axe, the funny beheadings. It's all awesome.
Yep.
It's all awesome and so fun. There was bits where I was laughing and you want to just laugh and clap because it's like watching a fairy tale play.
It is.
And then they come back and there's a big parade and la la la. And then the elected official picks up a rifle and shoots Baron Munchausen.
And he dies.
I think it's interesting. And then we get this amazing moment where he's literally fucking dead. He's dead on the ground. And we're like, wow, this is terrible. And then we hear, and that was one of the many times that I died, and we're back.
That's one of the many times that I died. Holy shit.
Right?
Right.
And then we see Baron Munchausen again, the real life, true Baron Munchausen, and he is old.
You forget how old he was at the beginning
because
of this
he's
movie.
Gotten so young through his adventures, but when you see how old he is in real life, you are like, oh, Jesus. He looks like he's like 90 years old. He's ready to go. But he's up there, and he's telling his story. And seeing the players all huddled on the side of the stage listening and watching the audience rapt. Because in his story, what happens is reason and logic kill Baron Munchausen, and that breaks the audience's heart.
They're crying. They're holding each other.
They're holding each other because...
And the man is standing right in front of them.
Right. But I think it's important to remember that when Baron Munchausen tells them the story, he puts a warning at the end, which is if you let it, reason and logic will kill your hope and kill your fantasy.
Yes.
And when we're back in the real world and fucking elected official dickhole, who, by the way, a great actor.
It's Jonathan Pryce.
Love him. Jonathan Pryce is the guy from Brazil.
Yep.
But even good guy, bad guy, I love him.
Pierce.
I fucking love him. Jonathan Pryce.
Jonathan Pryce.
Jonathan Pryce and Carl Hartley.
Carl Hartley.
But, for measuring clicks, I've been Jonathan Pryce and Jonathan Carl Hartley. But when he comes in, he's like, arrest that man. The crowd's like, fuck you.
No, they're totally done with it. They're like, fuck your shit.
They're like, no.
Literally go fuck
And you
your
know
shit.
what? That's it. Baron Munchausen's like, you know what? Open the gates. Let's go and talk to the enemy. Let's have a discourse. And the elected official's like,
Can't do that.
shouldn't open those gates. Definitely not. Lines up his guys. Anybody
Shoot
who tries
any
to
man to
open
move,
these gates. And that's when we get that moment, man, where they're all standing there, this huge throng, and a bunch of soldiers aiming their guns. It's 1988. This is not too long after... I can't remember the name of the school, but where this the same thing happened. A bunch of hippies doing a sit-in protest, and soldiers came. I can't remember the name of the fucking school. But this happened. This exact scenario happened, except with, like, college students. I almost had it for a second. But they shot a bunch of college students. And that's what I was expecting here, where I'm like, shit, Gilliam showed us the atomic bomb, and now he's going to shoot us. He's going to show us soldiers shooting innocent people. But what we get instead is basically they're like, no, because we've seen what happens when we let just someone with papers in his hand tell us what's true and what's not true. Let's go see for ourselves. And they walk past the guns, and none of the guns go off, and they open the gates, and there is no enemy.
I love that.
God damn, Carl. What a fucking movie, man. What a fucking movie.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you enjoyed this so much. This one has been one of my favorite movies for a very, very long time.
Yeah. God, it's amazing.
There are some other movies by him that we should look at in the future, dealing with the child actor thing, just to put it, just a thought in your head for later.
Yeah, what other? Because I want to watch all. I haven't seen Time Bandits. I want to watch that.
Right.
But I've seen Fear and Loathing. I've seen 12 Monkeys. But what's some other Gilliam I should look at? Go.
Well, so the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus is actually quite good.
Okay.
Brothers Grimm is an interesting one to watch because it is the same thing that happened to with Brazil, where the only version that we have is the
studio.
The Love Conquers All. There is no Gilliam cut for it, but it's a really interesting look at a studio.
He's said that basically.
Yeah, he's like, he
not my
fucking
movie.
hates Brothers Grimm. He's like, it's not my movie. It's not it's what he shot, but it's not my
cutter.
Oh, there's so many things left out of it. It's chopped in a weird order, so that. But recently, one of the more difficult movies to watch, period, ever, and it's a Gilliam movie. It's called Tideland.
one word?
Tideland. Yep.
Okay.
It's about a girl who essentially ends up having to live by herself because her father dies, and it deals with some really interesting and hard to deal with things about children, but also the children are stronger than sort of what you're talking about earlier. Is like the child is not aware of the danger; they just want to climb the tree.
Gotcha.
That movie, Tideland, is what this movie is, but it doesn't give you any help with it. It's like, this is a child in a very difficult set of circumstances, and you're going to have to deal with seeing this child in danger and dealing with it and finding a way to survive. It is fucking haunting and one of the most difficult movies to watch.
Is it PG?
Because no, it is not PG.
Hard R?
It's not like a hard R. I mean, it literally has like a 12-year-old girl as your
protagonist.
One. There's only like 4 people in the movie.
Oh, okay.
So it's that to me is like, from a filmmaking and a storytelling standpoint, and from an actor's standpoint too, and like what this young actor is doing, and where, like, she is not a child actor. She's one of those weird cases where they're like older than their years or something. They're pulling from, like, it's like, where are you getting this?
There's a few examples,
strength from, and this, like, how are you getting to that place? Like, that's mind blowing. But so Tideland, for sure, we should probably do it on the show at some point
because it's super killer and deserves a look.
Just deserves a look. But most people don't like it or can't make it all the way through the film.
Really?
Yeah, it's one of those. So
I watched a movie with Bird last year, which, speaking of like child actors in movies that deal with children in a way that makes a lot of adult people who watch it uncomfortable. There's a movie called Moonrise Kingdom. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have not seen, but have heard of Moonrise Kingdom.
It's directed by...
Is that Wes Anderson?
Yes, it is.
Okay, it is Wes Anderson.
Yeah, Moonrise, I always want to say Wes Craven.
Right, yeah.
But I'm like, it's a movie where children are slaughtered wholesale for 2 hours. No, it's a Wes Anderson film. It's called Moonrise Kingdom, and it's basically about like a quirky, plucky, adventurous young girl and a young boy who wants to be a scout, but they're both kind of like outcasts, kind of shit, and it's their love story. And what makes the movie, we should probably watch that one. Even if not for the show, we should watch that together.
Okay.
But watching that movie, you watch 2 pre-adolescents, but you watch like 2 12-year-olds or 13-year-olds fall in love, and it is so unashamed of young love that it's scary to watch.
Right.
Where it's like watching it, like Bird felt the same way. I felt this way. Some of my other film-loving friends, the guy who pointed it out to me in the first place was like, you're going to feel weird watching it.
Right.
Just because, like, here I am. I was 26 when I saw it, so I'm sitting here, I'm 26, and seeing 2, like, 13-year-olds, like, discovering each other and figuring out love, and watching 2 13-year-olds share their first kiss, and you're like, I don't know why.
I don't feel right.
You definitely feel weird about it, but the movie's beautiful. The movie's amazing. It's challenging, and part of what makes it challenging is asking yourself why it's challenging, because it's not at all lascivious or untoward. It's presented perfectly, purely, and unashamed. Right. But you feel weird watching it, and I think that's intentional. It's the movie's asking you, like, why is this bother you? Because there's nothing at all objectionable in it. It's very strange. Wow. But and it's also a genius Wes Anderson movie. So
I have drank his Kool-Aid. Oh boy.
Have you?
Oh,
me too.
I love
Wes Anderson.
I even like The Life Aquatic. It's like,
who doesn't love The Life Aquatic? Season 2, we might have a Wes Anderson one.
I think I'm fine with that.
All right, look, I got nothing else. So let's do a titch of housekeeping super fast. We'll just get it out of the way.
Get it out of the way.
Look, if you disagree with us or have awesome other troubling movies that you want us to watch, or just have something to say or something you want us to say in a funny voice on the show, I don't fucking care.
Kyle Hatley.
Kyle Hatley. We could say that in a variety of accents. But all you have to do is request it. Anyway, if you have anything you want to say to us or write to us at measuringflixpodcast@gmail.com. You can hit me up. Oh, God, I spent half an hour on Twitter this morning. I kind of regret it, but I kind of liked it, too.
Yeah.
You can find me on Twitter at Max J. Peterson. we should probably point to the fact that we're a listener-supported
Holy
podcast.
crap, Max!
We really are. If you like what we do, you like the movies we're talking about, we do other cool things over on patreon.com/Max Peterson. Bonus episodes, shout-outs on the show, produce an episode like at the higher levels, man. You can pick movies for us to watch.
We might Skype you in.
Ooh, fucking A.
What the fuck?
I've done it before on podcasts. I have the technology.
You hear that, folks?
And speaking of patrons and patronage and people who make this shit possible, John Scheibe, Casey Scheibe, John Scheibe, thank you fucking guys so much. This movie that we watched today, guys, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, I think you should give it a spin. I don't know if it's necessarily Casey's kind of thing, but I think John could dig something out of there. Then, of course, we have...
There's Connor Sweeney.
Connor Sweeney.
He's got a right huge cock, that one.
Is that true? I've never heard that.
It is.
I've never heard ever.
It's like...
There's the myths of the Sweeney cock that I grew up listening to him. Like there's like these childhood myths that you grow up hearing, where you hear of this mythical being named Connor. He's got a cock the size of a tree.
It's huge.
Not a little tree, a big fucking tree.
It's like a bitch.
Not even a birch. It's like a fucking redwood. It's like Oregon. It's like a redwood from Oregon. It's like it's about to stick around his house. I've heard he loses consciousness when he has a fucking erection. So much blood rushing to his brain, rushing up to his head.
He flat falls through the floor.
It's weird because there's more blood in his cock than there is in his entire body. No one knows where it comes from.
Nobody knows how he doesn't die.
There is some debate about whether or not there's an interdimensional portal in his balls where the blood comes in through from another dimension where there's
More pints.
There's oceans of Connor Sweeney's cock blood. Anyway, when he becomes fully turgid, it's actually visible from space. Now, it's impossible for him to keep his balance, even laying on his back. So oftentimes when he gets a full erection, he topples over like a mighty redwood in the Oregon. And when that tree falls, you best believe me, Carol, that people hear it. Whether they're there or not, people fucking hear it. So anyway, it falls down, it crashes. You can often find over where he lives in that side of town, you can find little ditches and ruts where his cock's hammered. Giant indentations into people's lawns. Small dogs have been killed. It's really quite a tragedy at the end of the day. Anyway, what we're really trying to say is we've always admired Connor Sweeney and his contributions to the show, and we hope that if we do have to die, as we all do at the end of the day, that it can be underneath the mighty girth and weight of Connor Sweeney's massive, unrealistic and unlikely penis. So
thank you, Connor.
Thank you so much. Carl.
That's a really good Scottish accent.
Thank you.
Holy
it took me a
shit.
second to find the rut.
I had to stop doing it. I'm like, I just sound like a asshole now.
Once I get in the groove, I'm there. But where can people find you, sir?
Oh, they can find me on Facebook, Carl Hartley, Karlhartley, or the Instas. That's KRAZYKARL006. That's pretty much all.
Crazy Carl.
Crazy Carl
006.
006.
Forgot to mention I'm also on Instagram at @ActualMaxP. And that's all we've got for you this time. What are we watching next week? Let's give them a spoiler.
Oh my gosh. Next week we are watching...
It's a weird movie, right?
It's another one of mine.
It's Blood and Concrete.
It's Blood and Concrete with the Billy Zane.
Oh my God,
as our
really?
lead character.
We're going to watch a Billy Zane movie on this podcast.
This movie is a movie that one of my good friends from Big Rapids lent me his VHS cassette tape of, and it took me 6 months to watch it. Every time we get together, like, so did you watch Blood and Concrete? Yeah, I was like, haven't gotten to it yet. Or I'd start watching it, get 10 minutes in, and be like, I can't watch this movie. This is fucking weird. But so it's one of those movies where it's it's a tribute to my good friend Mike Muma. That we're yes, Mike. Not only have I watched Blood and Concrete, but we are going to be covering it on Measuring Flicks.
So. Dude, I'm so excited. And anything that sounds where you're like, I can't make it through this is too weird, I'm like, let's watch that a couple times.
Yeah, can we do that?
All right, so for the outro, there's a line that I wrote down a quote, and I avoided talking about it in the show so that I could leave you with it as a thinker. At one point, Mr. Paperwork says, "We can't start escaping at a time like this. What would future generations think of us?" We talked about during the Brazil episode, the only people who unveil against escape are jailers. Mm-hmm. And look around at the world around you and the situation that we're all in. What will future generations think of us if we don't escape?